well that we have forgotten, lost, ignored. Yeah. And I'm talking about this evening's discussion, the African rites of passage. Yeah. A tradition stemming thousands and thousands of years on the continent of Africa. A tradition that no longer is in the forefront of our practices. For many people of African descent, they don't even know what the rites of passage is because they were never exposed to it or experienced it. So this evening we are here, myself and the royal cast, to dive into, the depth of this tradition and bring forward the knowledge of it so ones and ones can do their own research and start to implement these ancient practices back into our community because these traditions have proven successful in the past. And in this modern day, we have tried everything that they have taught us, that we have come and learned, but we have not tried the traditions of our ancestors because we have been taught to reject them. We are taught that they are taboo, they're hedonistic, pagan, all those stigmas that they have put into our minds have become stereotype right now. So a lot of ones, when they hear it, they just shun it. Just like how prior to the last 20 years, when you said to any person of color, oh, blessed my African brother or sister, many would say to you, I'm not African. I was born in America. I was born here. I was born there. Not realizing that an alligator or a cat born in an alligator pond doesn't become an alligator. It's still a cat. Yeah, kittens born in an oven. They are not biscuits. Still kittens. And if you look at the Asians, a Chinese, no matter where he exists, where he's born, he's still identified as a Chinese. I and I are the only people that we are now being identified by where we have been marooned, where we have been abandoned, the places that we have domiciled because we had no choice. And we are not being identified by the place of our origin. And this is purposely done because there are those out there that want to claim our place of origin for themselves to, bask in the bounty of our motherland, Africa. So they don't want I and I, the original, occupiers of that land, to claim the rights to it. So now you have many ones, who have entered our land, those living in the southern region who call themselves Africana. And they will tell you, yes, I'm African. And you ask them, how long you been living here? Oh, 2 generations, 5 generations. Not realizing that I and I, melanated people, our navel string was cut there. That our mother, Africa Eve, was the original mother of all human beings. So what they have done is stolen our legacy. It's a stolen legacy. But today we are reclaiming our legacy and we are re-embracing those traditions of our ancestors that served us so well for millennia. So we give thanks for all who are here this evening to take this Sankofa with I and I. We're going into the past so we can see how to move forward in the present to the future. So stick and stay, don't go anywhere. Yeah, there is a lot coming that I'm sure you will enjoy. Rastafari. Yes, family, you don't know. I and I is Africans, and we will never deny our heritage. The man say you cannot give away a continent for an island. So no matter how we have developed our island, we have built up Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Virgin Islands, and others. That doesn't change the fact that we are Africans. Rastafari.
Yes, greetings, royal family, royal, royal, and majestic African Nubian family. You are listening to Roots and Culture on Turn It Up Radio on turnitup.com with your host, Rasavana Shanti, and the royal cast, members of the Woman Freedom Liberation League. Yes, we have a great program for you tonight. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy. We will be with you in 1 minute.
Coming up shortly will be inspiration meditation.
Yes. And we are live streaming on the EABIC Council of Elders YouTube channel. That is the EABIC Council of Elders YouTube channel, where we bring you edutainment. Good evening, priest, and how are you tonight?
Oh, Royal Empress, give thanks. I am blessed. I am so blessed. Giving thanks to be here once again, to
Yes.
enjoy this beautiful journey that we are on, edifying ourselves and our community. And I hope everyone will receive the information that we are bringing this evening with an open mind, open heart, and realize how much we have lost in this modern world that was so beautiful in that ancients of time. So give thanks,
Correct.
Empress. I am truly blessed.
Yes, give thanks. Give thanks. Yes. Would you like me to go ahead with the
In about a
inspiration?
few minutes, as we finish prepping the moment.
Yes, just a reminder that we are live streaming.
Yes, yes, family, we do give thanks, for another Roots and Culture. I am your host, Rasavana Shanti. Yes, and the royal cast of angels that you will be hearing tonight as we journey into the past to move forward. Yeah, information is power, knowledge is power. So as we empower ourselves with knowledge, we hope that you join us and be empowered also, so we can have a strong chain. Because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And our weak link is lack of knowledge. The man say many die because of the lack of knowledge,
Um,
just like how the fool is still thirsty in the abundance of water. So let us not be like those fools, those five virgins that did not bring enough oil for their lamps. And when their lamps went out, went to retrieve more oil, and while they were gone, the bridegroom came and took those other five who were wise and had enough oil to maintain themselves within the moment. See, so I hope you have enough oil in your lamp tonight, yeah, for this journey. Rastafari.
all right.
Ethiopia, Africa, the land of our fathers and mothers, the land where I and I, gods and goddesses, would love to be this moment. Yeah, Rastafari.
And for whatever reason, we're not hearing the music on our side.
Oh, we are now tuned in to Roots and Culture. We are now tuned into Roots and Culture on Turn It Up Radio, turnitup.com. We're also streaming live on the Council of Elders, the ABIC Council of Elders YouTube channel. Yes, Rastafari. It's been a time, so many things happening around the world. We will be hearing a lot in the Pan African news segment this evening, coming up with Empress Trisha. And we'll also be having commentary with Empress Dion. A lot to digest, you know, a lot to analyze, to see how we can work together to make a difference. Because we all came here to fulfill a destiny. And that for I is to leave the earth a little better than we found it. Making sure that at least we do not leave it worse. And at this point, from I was a youth until now I'm an adult, things have definitely went the opposite direction from better. Things have gotten worse. Yeah, the interaction of people have become cold and callous. The harmony, the peace, the brotherly love and sisterly love, the unconditional love, those things have little bit of meaning today in today's world. So it's definitely gotten worse. So our task is ahead of us and it's cut out for us. The man said we have to make hay while the sun is shining. We are only here for a short period of time. So let us do the best we can. Like they say, the old saying goes, do all the good you can to all the people you can in every way that you can for as long as you can. Yeah. So let us persevere and endeavor to fulfill that statement. Yeah. Do unto others as we would have them do unto I and I. I love love. I can't stand it. So that's what I want to feel from my brothers and sisters and from humanity. Love. See? So that's what we are here to share with our listeners. A heart of love. See, expressed through word sound, which is power. Music, the universal language. Seeing good information which uplifts our consciousness. And we are guided by our consciousness. Unlike what most people think that you're guided by your mind is just your computer. Yeah, it is programmed by what it experiences, what it sees, what it hears. But your consciousness is what analyzes all that information, processes it, and gives you a conclusion. Yes, it points you in the right direction. The conscience, the conscience is that little voice within. And I call it that little man within or woman within. That's the essence of the creator. Yeah, the man said, look within, for the Almighty. And look within for the answers to questions never posed before. So there is no existing precedence in the world. The man said to look within yourself for those answers. And then for what you don't find within yourself, you look to your brothers and sisters. And between us all, we will come up with the answers because it's encoded within our DNA, within our genome. And all we have to do is unlock it. Now, that's the process that we have to learn. How do we unlock the encoded information? Yeah. And this happens through interaction, through sharing. Like they say, sharing is caring. Yeah, through sharing. Because, like I said, what I don't know, you may know. What you don't know, another may know. So when we commune together, we will know what we need to know. Not true? Yeah, man. Check it. So this evening, in 5 minutes, we will be having the inspiration meditation, and that will really kick us off as the Empress inspires our consciousness. It invokes that essence of divine truth within us. And then now we can share that truth by communication, by vibration, because that's what the music does. It creates a vibration through the frequency that it pushes. And our body, our spirit, the essence of who we are, thrives on vibration. You have the lower vibration that when you're down and out and you're feeling low, yeah, you're not vibrating at a high level. But as you uplift yourself and your consciousness awakens, yeah, your vibration increases. Music, knowledge, communication does that. It rises your vibration. Yeah, see? So let us prepare for that elevation this evening through, again, word, sound, and power. Looking forward to a great discussion as we unlock, unpack, you know, the rites of passage of Africans. What our ancestors did in the past, how did they do it? Because it surely worked. We are an example of that. Because with all that we have gone through, with what the African has gone through slavery, colonization, and now neo-colonization, and we are still here fighting the good fight. It shows that our ancestors did do something great by placing within us that pearl of truth. Yes, Rastafari. So we give thanks and we give praises unto the Most High, Haile Selassie the First, Empress Menen Asfa, and all those giants on whose shoulders we stand. Unity is the only accepted goal, as declared by Emperor Haile Selassie the First. And if we are wise people, look at what unity is. Unity is the coming together of peoples. It's bonding together. It's developing that brotherly and sisterly love. What we call brotherhood and sisterhood, based on love, under the guidance of our Almighty Father and Mother. So we do give thanks to be among the chosen ones, because you have to choose yourself first. How do you choose yourself? By making a pledge within yourself to be the best that you can be in all things. Because no matter what you're doing, anything that is worth doing to the best of your ability. That was one of the teachings of our ancestors. They always strive to bring out the greatness in each other. Unlike today's world, when we try to marginalize each other, undermine each other, disgrace each other. Yeah, no, that was never the way of the African. That way became infused among us when we encountered external forces. But it's now 7:30 in the studios of Turn It Up Radio, turnitup.com. Here now is inspiration meditation with the Royal Empress, Trisha. Royal Empress.
Yes, greetings again, Royal Family, and I pray all is well with each and every one tonight. Tonight's inspiration is borrowed from our Queen Mother, Maya Angelou. I am Honorable Empress Trisha, and I pray that these words find you in perfect health and you are inspired to be the best you that you can be. People who are addicted to conflict will always resent your peace. People who only know how to connect through combat will always feel abandoned when you choose silence over struggle. But choosing not to engage is not avoidance, it's mastery. It's refusing to be reduced. It's refusing to be reduced. It's knowing that not every fire is meant to be fought. Some are meant to burn out on their own while you walk away untouched. There are people who will always try to bait you every time they feel out of control. Their questions aren't questions, they're traps. Their tone isn't curious, it's combative. You owe them nothing, not your time, not your explanation, not your calms, especially not your calms. Because not everyone deserves a reply, and not everyone's voice that reaches you deserves your ear. If you argue with a fool, someone watching may not know the difference. If you argue with someone not determined to listen, you've already lost. Stop entering wars because you were invited. Let them battle their shadows without recruiting you. Let them throw their words into an empty hallway. You are not their echo. You are not their sparring partner. You're not here to make their anger feel justified. You're here to protect your light. Sometimes the greatest power is not in what you say, it's in what you no longer feel the need to say. Reinvention is about progress and continually striving to be better, to learn, to grow deeper. Reinvention does not happen by accident. It begins with a decision to take ownership of your life and to refuse to let your circumstances dictate your story. Ashe, 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 oh. Now let's love my Lord and Empress, Prince and Princess, Royal Family. Give thanks.
We have had so many great wordsmiths among us that have brought us such beautiful poetry, such beautiful words of upliftment to encourage I and I, to touch I and I inner being. That's how powerful words are. Words can uplift and words can destroy our spirit. That's why our Father teaches us to be impeccable with our words. Make sure before you speak, you weigh what you're going to say, making sure that no matter whether it is in opposition to something or it is in confirmation to something, that we speak impeccably, using the best words to uplift. Because remember, it is taught that we have to love even the enemy, those that despise us and do all manner of evil against us. Because if we don't carry that level of love, then we become like them. Those very people that repulse us, we become just like them. We sharing hate for hate does not bring a solution. They say a calm answer turneth away wrath. So when you're attacked, instead of defending yourself with aggression, let's try to reverse that psychosis by applying calm, uplifting words. You know, saying, my brother, I know you may be angry, but there is always a solution to a problem. And it does not come through violent or physical confrontation. It comes through dialogue, understanding each other, why we said what we said or we did what we did. And if what we did hurt someone, no matter how we might feel like we had the right to do it, if it hurt someone, then that means that it wasn't right. Because gods and goddesses are not here to hurt, we are here to heal. We are sent here to help the planet to heal, not to further inflict pain and suffering. So, like I said, let's make sure that our words are impeccable. Yes, I, Rastafari. Yeah, tonight,
We'd like to
rites
say
of
greetings to Honorable Empress Akim. She is in tonight. Welcome, welcome, Empress Akim.
Yes, blessed love, royal family, blessed love, priest.
give
How is
thanks, Royal
everyone?
Empress. Yes,
Yes,
I.
give thanks, give thanks.
Yeah,
I'm
man, it's
happy to
good to
be
hear.
here.
Yeah, good, good, good. It's good to hear the royal cast coming in because I can't do this alone. And yeah, there's always have to. It has to be a balance. What is the balance? The divine male energy and the divine feminine energy. That's the balance. Yeah. So I give thanks for the balance tonight as we endeavor to edify our listening audience with conscious information, with truth and right. Yeah, we're not here to fuss and fight. Yeah, we are here to love. We are lovers. See why? Love is God. Yeah, love is God. God doesn't abide in anything else but love. And we are gods and goddesses of the earth. Like I said earlier, you have to choose yourself, you know. By your actions is how you prove who you are. A man and woman is judged by their intent. What is your intention in life? Is it just to achieve material? Is it to um, exercise authority over others? Or is it to unify, to uplift, to bring peace and
Love,
harmony within our
Hmm.
community?
joy, and
I think
harmony.
that's where we are.
Correct,
True
correct,
indeed.
Rastafari.
correct.
Hmm.
Yes, I. So in another, I'd say 20 minutes, we will really get into the conversation. But until that time, you know, we just cut and clear and clear the air a bit with some conscious music.
Yes, family, while you are listening, we are live streaming on the EABIC Council of Elders YouTube channel with your host. This is Roots and Culture on Turn It Up Radio on turnitup.com with your host, Rasavana Ashanti and the Royal Cast from the Woman Freedom Liberation League of the EABIC. We have with us thus far Honorable Empress Akim and myself, Empress Trisha, and we do have a few more sisters to come in. So as we wait for them to begin our discussion tonight on the rites of passage, how are you tonight, Empress Akin?
Yes, blessed
All right.
love. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Give thanks. I'm excited about this topic, you know. I'm grateful that we are delving into deeper territory to free our people, you know. And so
Correct.
this one topic is dear to me as well,
Yeah.
because I would love to share my own personal story,
Mm.
in my journey of rites of passage to open me up back to the things that our people have forgotten about ourselves, as African people. So I give thanks for the topic tonight. Yes, give thanks.
Yes, we have been taught to neglect or to shun many of our traditions that have served our ancestors very well over the millennia. Give thanks, we are finally identifying that the modern ways are not solving our problems. There's a
Mm-hmm.
saying, not everything that's new is good, and not everything that is old is bad. The wise takes the best of both worlds and we merge them together and we create that greatness. Yeah. One ancient called it a modern antique. Yeah, Raspido. Yeah, God bless him soul. One of the wordsmiths of the past. Raspido was a very eloquent, person.
Oh,
He was I would say, a dub poet in his own right. As he traveled the globe, you know, um, among the elders, the ancient elders. Everyone should know that CD that the ancient elders of Rastafari has put out for many years.
yeah.
That original elder CD. Raspido voice can be heard on it. Stating, the culture of Africa in a modern way. Yes,
And so there's just so many beautiful, beautiful artifacts. There's so many beautiful headdresses. The colors
Mm-hmm.
are exquisite. And I mean, what we have now is in no comparison for what is worn or have been worn on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
Each tribe having their own colors, their own patterns, their own way of doing things, their own way of, their own rites of passages, and their own way of doing things.
beauty is in
True.
diversity.
Yes,
It
true
is, sure
indeed.
is.
Mm-hmm.
They say
Even,
variety is the spice of life, because
Mm,
if everything was the same color, had the same taste, the same smell, the same visual effect, then we would be
mm,
in a very bland world, a very
mm-hmm.
tasteless world. But in the variety of everything, there is the
Right.
spice of life. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and that is also in the human race by the many ethnicities that have come from the African Eve. You now have a world that is so beautiful, with all these different ethnic people expressing themselves in their cultural expression, like the Empress just said, in their variations of colors and symbols and, word expressions, the different languages, the many languages that even I
correct.
and I as Africans speak. I'm not even sure how many languages, and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
there is a precise count of how many languages is spoken on the African continent. There might be a close approximation, but there are sub languages to
Mm,
languages. There are dominant language in a region, but there are many sub languages in that same very region with the different tribes that are there. So we as a people, we are very diverse.
Yes.
But like the man said, that does not restrict the unity. As a matter of fact, if we are wise, that enhances the unity, because then we know that we have a lot to learn. So we humble ourselves to receive that knowledge, to learn a bit of this language, a little bit of that language, to understand that culture, the Ashanti culture, the Igbo culture, the Zulu culture, the
Mm-hmm.
Ethiopian culture. There's so much for I and I to learn. And
So
knowledge is
true.
so powerful, so enhancing that, yeah, it's beautiful, sisters.
I was talking with my students today. I am an art teacher in high school, and I love that I get to bring culture into the room, But today I was teaching on perspective, and not necessarily perspective in how we see one another, but I brought that aspect into the teaching, into the lesson. But we were talking about how do you see three dimensional, like outdoors, right? How do you see three dimensional, and how are you able to apply that to drawings? How can you turn three dimensional, atmospheric perspective drawings into two dimensional? And I shared with them learning to see things in a different manner broadens your perception in so many ways that changes you as a person. And that was my segue into showing them how you also view others,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're able to see the world in a different way, like, wow, the trees are these different colors and shades. And, when seasons change here in the US, you know, the leaves change from green to purples to oranges and yellows and all these beautiful colors. But then I tied in the beauty of how we see one another. I shared with them, I see the world in an artistic way. It's always been, something that I've been able to experience as a child. That when I look at the clouds, I don't know if I see things differently than others, but I know for it was always more vibrant. The sky would be beautiful, and the clouds, and I was sharing with them that we also need to look at one another. And I brought in that aspect of culture and race, ethnicity groups, because within my class I have Hispanic and Asian, and I made sure that I pull, their culture out, based on knowing some things about them and their background, so that they
Mm-hmm.
can open up their perspective and start looking at one another as creative beings, And so,
Wow.
this learning these things, especially for us as Africans, will broaden our perspective of ourselves, and how we view one another. Because oftentimes things that are different, we don't accept so much. But when we think about the diaspora and us as African people, living on the continent and abroad, and embracing those things that are different but yet very similar, we learn to be more accepting, and we learn to see the world in such a more beautiful way, So, once we get a little deeper into the conversation, I pray that we are able to, even our own experiences with how we view different cultures and the tapestries, like you mentioned, Empress Trisha, the
Right.
clothing and the vibrant, fabrics and beadwork and all those different things, because how we look at one another is how we look at ourselves, really. When we can see the beauty in another, we can recognize the beauty in ourselves, you know? Yeah.
Truly, true, true. And part of our problem, though, just like, to identify the solution, we must understand the causation. And
Mm,
one of the causation of I and I being so close-minded and so, self-centered is being colonized. You know,
colonialism, indeed,
yes, and
priest.
part of that colonial structure is religion. And
Mm,
religion has separated us so bad. People might wonder why I and I harp upon religion so much. It's
mm,
because religion has done such an irreparable damage to us as a
yeah.
people. You know what I mean? It has taken away that open-mindedness that our ancestors taught us. Because
Mm-hmm,
unlike I and I, Africans acknowledge the fact that they grew up on a continent filled with different expressions.
Yes, diversity.
Yes, but
Mm-hmm.
religion came into play, and they taught us that only through the blood of that person that you can enter the kingdom of God. Only
Mm-hmm.
through whose blood,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell us about this person that gave up his life for the world. Now, it was never one person to begin with that made that
Mm.
sacrifice. Many people made the sacrifice of doing right, of living righteous in their own way, of sacrificing their own comforts for the greater good of others. But we are taught about this blonde hair, blue eyed person that is
Right.
the ultimate. And for centuries, we have been beaten into submission, into
Mm.
accepting that reality. And this is the end result, where
Right.
a whole world of people thinks that another whole world of people are enemies because they are not saying exactly the same thing. The Christian would want to tell the Buddhists that you have to give up Buddhism to be saved.
Mm.
The Muslim is doing the same thing. And others, all the what they call modern religion, the Jewish,
Right. Indeed.
are, yes, doing the same thing when our ancestors never taught us that. They taught us to embrace people. And I think to our own demise, because
Mm.
if we were not that open when the Europeans first sailed around the Cape of Good Hope and landed on the shores of Africa, we would have done differently. But even though we were seeing the pale skinned, colorless people for the first time, we embraced them as humans, as part of the human family. And we taught them to our own demise
Mm.
because
Mm.
for the love that we shared, they returned hate. And why I say that? Because I'm sitting in the United States of America today. And this wasn't
Right.
by choice. I rose up on the island of Jamaica. It wasn't by choice. These places to me are not as sacred as my home, Africa. I don't hold Jamaica, USA, and the Western Hemisphere as dear as I hold Africa
Right.
because that is my ancestral home. That is where my tradition as a human began in the loins of my ancestors. And
Mm.
I was taught that everything that they did was wrong. It was pagan, it was hedonistic, it was negative, and it was all fallacy.
Right.
But it is now 7:53 in the studios of Turn It Up Radio, turnitup.com. In another 7 minutes, we will kick off the reasoning, and hopefully other members of the cast will be coming in to impact it with their knowledge. Because we have to acknowledge now that we all only possess one unit of knowledge. No matter how much we know, we don't know it all. Each of us brings something to the table. And when we understand that, we'll be able to solve this puzzle of life. When we keep thinking that it's about me, I, yeah, that's where we lose it. It's about I and I and I. One of the greatest expressions created by Rastafari, the I and I concept, because the I and I concept means that everyone is included. He, she, our ancestors, along with the creator. Nothing is left out within that concept of I and I and I. It's a full structure of unity. See, and so I and I give thanks for the teaching of our ancestors, the teachings of the founding fathers of Rastafari, and that is very important. Why? Yes, while our ancestors on the continent are very important, without the founding fathers of Rastafari for I and I here in the West, we would have been lost forever. It was Rastafari who held up the imagery of Africa and said, This is where we come from. This is where we want to go. We want no part of what is developing here in the Western world until we are returned to our home. And Rastafari paid the price for doing that. Many of I and I were brutalized, locked away in mental establishments, saying that we were crazy because we would not yield to the misconception of Babylon. We would not hold on to the materialism that they were infusing into us. And we would not embrace their religion. We rejected that. The early Rastafari rejected down to the King James version of the Bible. You could hear Rastafari saying, the King James version, you gave I King James version.
Mm.
King James was a white man. Now give I Maccabee version, cause I am a black man. Yeah, Maccabee version is one of the original versions of the Bible that came out of our ancestral home, that is closer to the truth than these revised versions that were created for specific purposes to subdue us and keep us in submission to a false philosophy and create within us and among us a false identity. Because now, when we introduce to each other, we are saying, "Oh, I'm a Trinidadian. Oh, I'm a Jamaican. I'm a Barbadian. I'm a Afro American." We are none of that. We are all Africans. As long as you are melanated, you originated on the continent of Africa. Like Peter Tosh said, as long as you're black, you're an African. Rastafari.
Mm. Indeed. I was just sitting here thinking, I get emotional around these things. I'm a very emotional person. I'm very passionate, but I think about how traumatic the journey has been for the African, you know, um, and to say also African American, right? Um, and that journey back, that Sankofa, that return to self has been very difficult for many ones. And I think about my own journey. I won't go into it now. Um, I'm grateful that it wasn't so difficult, but there's certain aspects that I'll touch on later that were challenging. But me and my son reason very often about this because he has friends. He's more amongst his peers. He's more enlightened. I would say more knowledgeable about his culture. And so they look to him and he shares information, but it's very difficult for ones to embrace the truth about themselves. And one is actually a Ghanaian young man who um he doesn't have a very respect a respect for his culture, which is very interesting. And we talk about this often because he, even being born of two African parents, but being raised in the US, is very difficult for him to escape the brainwashing. He is a Christian young man, and he doesn't honor or respect his culture, um, even down to bleaching his skin at one point. And I just think about how traumatic the journey has been for us, and you think about how one suffer here in the States now with drug use and abuse and alcoholism. And I look at it every day as a sign of how traumatic this has been. Because when you don't know yourself and you don't know where you come from, you would destroy yourself. But there's a sense of
Oh, yeah.
pride and honor that you have when you say, wait a minute, I'm an African. I come from kings and queens. I'm original. And I look at these beautiful pictures that Empress Trisha is sharing on the Zoom, and I'm just like, I just smile because we have such a rich culture. We have such a rich culture and so many different traditions. that span all the different ethnic groups in Africa. And, you know, I hurt. I hurt a bit for those who are very, very challenged. They're challenged, with embracing, even the idea of learning more about their ancestry, you know, because it's real. It's real. Ones are they again, priest, you mentioned that it's very taboo, you know, that one see it as taboo. They see it as pagan, and that the Christian way is the only way, and that, okay, yes, there's been, pictures of Jesus, what ones would say that are Christian. Okay, yes, so pictures have been painted of this, pale skin, blue eyed Jesus, but they will stop there and say, okay, well, maybe that's false, maybe that's fallacy, but everything else, we're going to accept. But to go a little deeper is very, very challenging for ones, very, very challenging,
You're
but
proving the
that
point.
fear has been placed in religion too. So that's why, if you told that if you think any differently than Christianity, you're doomed. You know what I mean? And so I can see why ones, I empathize with them because I can see how it can be very scary to go back and fetch, to go back
You know what is
and
funny?
fetch this
You're
stuff.
proving the point because for an African to reject his African culture and
Mm-hmm.
profess that he's a Christian, that tells you how colonized he has been and
Mm-hmm.
his family has been, knowing very well that even Christianity, when Africa embraced it, it was not as is today. Now, Africa embraced Christianity long before Europe did.
True.
What is being force fed to the world for the last how many years was first embraced on the continent of Africa in the first between the first and third century AD, when Europe embraced or started to embrace Christianity in the third and fourth century, and later down in those periods. Now, it was also spread throughout Europe using force. It
Right.
was not the divine essence of the practice or the levity that inspired people to embrace it. For example, like Rastafari. Rastafari is a global tradition today, a global levity today. You can go most places in the world and you find Rastafari presence. And it was not spread through any form of violence. On the contrary, the essence of Rastafari that the world knows is peace and love. While the modern religions of today were all spread through violence. If ones know their history, you will know of the several crusades that were taken to spread that doctrine. What are crusades? They were so called religious people that traveled from place to place with the gun and the bayonet. Back then, it was the bayonet and the spear and the arrow and whatever they used as weapons until guns came into existence. But it was force, brute force, violence that was used to spread Christianity, Islam, Judaism. They were all spread through the sword.
Mm.
That's why, if I was to say embrace a religion, I would no more go for the Buddhists
Mm-hmm.
because what the Buddhists practice is humility.
Mm-hmm.
They seek to be in full control of every aspect of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what every human being should seek to do, to be in total control of your actions and not let your emotions, your beliefs, your sentiment overtake your consciousness. which is what we have done. We're sentimental towards politics, so we become very forceful with our political expression. We are sentimental and emotional towards our religious beliefs, so we do the same. And we want to force people to embrace our way. It's our way or no way. And
Mm.
that is not divine. How we talk about benevolence, we talk about divinity, we talk about, you
Mm.
know, love. How is any of that benevolent, divine, or love? No, it is being open to people's opinions, to different expressions, different cultures, different beliefs that makes us truly divine. That's why Emperor Haile Selassie I was bestowed with the honor of being the defender of the faith, because he is known as a man of tolerance when it comes to people's faith. Even in one of his speech, he said that it's personal. Spirituality is personal. It's a
Rastafari.
personal interaction between a person and their creator, the inner essence of who you are. I am speaking to you now. I am able to speak to you because of the God that exists within I, the essence of God, which is what we call spirit. The spirit that dwells within I, allow I now to be able to speak to you all. And that's the God within. So this imagery of, that we have burdened the world with, saying that these different images, we must accept them as the ultimate source of God, we can see that that's a misnomer. When the Buddhists see his God through Buddha, Krishna, and whatever gods they profess, and others, even the Europeans, want to claim their God through Jesus, that's okay. Like Marcus Messiah Garvey said, if the white man wishes to worship a white God, let him. He has that right. But I and I will worship the God of Ethiopia because we also have that right. No one
Mm-hmm.
has the right to interpret another person's spirituality, faith, or religious beliefs. That is colonization. You are trying to colonize people by forcing concepts on them that are not naturally um, existing within them. Yes, I. Royal Empress Trisha, we are kicking off this reasoning now as we go into the rites of passage. Introduce it for I and I, if you're there and ready.
1 second, I've been monitoring the YouTube, the
Mhm.
YouTube station.
Yeah.
Yes. 1 second.
Yes, Rastafari. Yeah, so we're tonight we're here discussing rites of passage family, looking at traditions of the past that served us and that we have lost. And that's why we are struggling. Just like it says, it takes a village to grow a child, and we have lost the village concept. That's why we are losing our children to the shit stem. It's the
Yeah.
very same thing. We have lost the concept of rites of passage. So we are
Yes.
not molding our children from an early age to be adults, to be progressive and contributing adults within our community. We are sending them to the very people that subdued us to teach them. We are sending Africans to Europeans to be taught how to be Africans. It's
Mm.
like sending a bear to a crocodile to be taught how to be a bear.
Get ate up.
There's, yeah, there's something wrong with that picture. Yes, you become you. It's the nature of the crocodile to eat
Ay,
flesh.
ay,
So
ay.
definitely you'll be eaten, and that's what is happening to
Mm,
us. Our children are
Correct.
being eaten by the
mm,
system. So we have
mm,
to take charge now and look at what tools our ancestors use that were so
mm,
successful that today we can be here speaking in this depth of consciousness. How did we achieve this knowledge that we are bringing out of ourselves today? What did our ancestors do to encode it in us? We are yet to understand this. Many researchers and scientists have tried to unlock the mystery, but it is I and I who have to do it. Like the man say, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. For while others can free you from the temporal chains, only you can free your mind. Empress Trisha.
mm.
Yes, greetings again, and welcome to this segment of the Rites of Passage. We have with us our host, Rasavana Ashanti, and Honorable Empress Akim, our
And
teacher.
yourself, Empress Trisha. Rastafari.
Indeed.
Good. And we have other sisters to come. Yes, and we begin by explaining, what rites of passage is. We know that many cultures out there do have their different types of rites of passages, but we focus in tonight on the African rites of passage. African rites of passage are cultural ceremonies that mark life transitions such as birth, adulthood, marriage, and elderhood, providing a sense of identity and community belonging. These rites often involve instruction in traditional values and customs, with participants undergoing periods of segregation and trials that culminate in formal ceremonies marking their new social status, like the hammer bull jumping ceremony, which is done in Ethiopia, of various initiation rituals involving physical modifications. African roots, purpose root, African roots and roots, Roots and Routes. The purpose of rites of passage, the transition. Rites of passage signify a significant change in an individual's life, moving them from one stage to another. The identity and the belonging. They help individuals understand their new roles and responsibilities, fostering a sense of connection to their community. The cultural transition. Rights pass down community values, traditions, and knowledge to the next generation. Stages of life marked by rites birth. Traditional naming ceremonies introduce a newborn to the community. Adulthood. This is a common focus involving rituals that prepare young people for adult responsibilities and sometimes include circumcision. Marriage. Ceremony celebrates the union of two families, not just two people, but two families and individuals. Eldership. Rites mark the passage into old age, elderhood, symbolizing accumulated wisdom and knowledge. Ancestorship. Rites can signify the transition of a soul into the spirit world. Examples of specific rites. The Lebolo La Basadi, South Africa, is a female initiation rite among the Basotho. The Hama bull jumping ceremony, celebrated in Ethiopia, where young men prove their readiness for marriage by jumping over a herd of cattle. Interesting. Initiations, various groups. These can involve periods of isolation for instruction, physical challenges, and public commitments to the community. Key aspects of the rites segregation. Initiates Initiates are often removed from the rest of the community for a period of instruction and trials. Ordeals. These can include painful physical rituals such as scarring and test of endurance. That is ordeals. Instruction. Elders provide lessons on history, values, and community responsibilities. The ceremony. At the conclusion, a formal ceremony formally acknowledges the individual's new adult status and reignites them into the community. So those are some of the various rites of passages.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just jump in here for a second. Now, that's giving you a general overview of some of the essence of rites of passage. Now, the mutilation of the body for Rastafari, that would not be something that we would embrace on a certain level. Okay. Now, I would not oppose it, because until I return to the continent and really sit with my elders and get the full essence of how that process really began, because we have heard several accounts of why that culture um, originated. Now, because again, I'm in the West, I cannot say definitively one way or the other, even though we have studied it for many years, and we have heard several different explanations. See, why I zone in on that aspect is because circumcision is something done in the West here as well, but circumcision is mostly done to boys, removing the foreskin of their penis. What they do to the females is a little bit different, and not even a little bit. It's different, and the reason behind it that I've heard does not um, win me over. In places like Ethiopia, it's a very spiritual place. Africa in itself is a very spiritual continent. But let's zone in on Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a very spiritual country where they teach you to be in control of all aspects of your actions. His Majesty has a speech. He said, discipline of the mind is a very essential and important ingredient in the achievement of general morality. He goes on to say, a leader must be exemplary. He must be in control of all of his actions and his bodily functions. Starting with what? Your thoughts. Because the sin and the corruption does not begin with the action, it begins with the thought. As soon as you think it, you have corrupted yourself. Even if you don't follow through and fulfill it, the thought corrupts. You know, by thinking it, you have to go purge yourself. You have to purge that thought out of your mind, purge that whole whatever it is you intake out of your system. So it begins with the thought. The man said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He spake, and it was done. That's how powerful the thought is. Because before you speak, you have to think. The word doesn't just pop up. You think about, well, what I'm trying to say to, like right now I'm speaking. I have to be thinking ahead of my speech to be able to verbalize what I want to share. So it begins with the thought. When we are able to control our thoughts, then we are able to master our actions. Sisters,
Yes. And
yes, I.
before we do begin, we would like to welcome another one of our royal sisterins, Honorable Empress Cindy. And I'd also like, you can unmute your mic, Empress Cindy, and I'd also like to share the video since we're live streaming.
1 second. Family, Royal Empress Cindy is one of our resident historian as well. So, yeah, we welcome the royal historian into our midst at this moment.
Yes.
Welcome, Empress Cindy.
Blessed love, my Lord and Empress. Give thanks for the night hour and give thanks for welcoming I into this wonderful community of Tune It Up, ready to give thanks, my Lord.
Blessed.
Rastafari.
Blessed love.
Blessed Empress.
Yes, Royal Empress Cindy. I mean, Empress Trisha, you can go ahead and, you know, um, cue up your video. While the Empress does that, we can continue to share tidbits of our
Can you
knowledge.
hear it?
Do African rites of
Yes,
passage
yes.
still matter to new generations? Imagine stepping into a world where a single ceremony can shape your entire life path. That's what rites of passage have done for centuries across Africa. These traditional ceremonies mark key moments like becoming a young adult, getting married, or entering elderhood. They are more than just celebrations. They are the way communities pass down values, responsibilities, and cultural identity. Take the Mosque of Kenya, for example. When boys reach a certain age, they go through rites like Nkipata, which prepares them for warrior status. Later, they participate in Unoto, a ceremony that signifies their transition into elderhood. These rites involve physical challenges, social rituals, and spiritual teachings. They help young men understand their roles and responsibilities in their community. Across many African societies, these ceremonies still hold importance today. They give young people a sense of belonging and help them understand what is expected as they grow older. These rites also keep traditions alive, passing down stories, beliefs, and customs from generation to generation. They serve as a bridge connecting the past with the present. However, modern influences are changing how these rites are practiced. Urbanization, education, and exposure to global cultures mean some communities are adapting or creating new versions. For example, some groups replace harmful traditional practices with ceremonies that focus on education and personal growth. These new
Exactly.
rites still mark important life stages, but are more aligned with current values like gender equality and health. There is also a movement among young Africans and those in the diaspora to revive and celebrate their cultural roots. Many see rites of passage as a way to reconnect with their heritage and resist losing their identity due to colonial history and globalization. These ceremonies are now seen as tools for cultural pride and self-awareness. Today, rites of passage often include lessons on life skills, community service, and personal responsibility. They help young people understand their roles in families and society. They also teach respect for tradition while preparing them to face modern challenges. In the end, these rites still matter because they do more than mark a life stage. They keep cultural stories alive, build community bonds, and give young people a sense of purpose. Even as their forms evolve, their core purpose remains strong. They continue to shape identities and preserve the rich diversity of African cultures.
Yes,
Yes.
I.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Well explained in simple. Now, it's a tradition that helps us to pass on our legacy. It's a legacy tradition where we are able to pass on our moral virtues, our ancestral practices, sacred sciences, what
Preserving the
people have
culture.
turned into religion. Pardon me, Empress?
No, I said preserving the culture.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important. Rites of passage is very important because if we were doing our rites of passage throughout these decades, we would not be facing the kind of dilemma that we are with our children today. Because, like myself, who have grown several children within the culture of Rastafari and Pan African liberty, our children tend to drift away from that culture when they grow into adulthood because I am individually teaching them and by myself, but by myself, I am unable to fulfill what needs to be fulfilled. As the old adage says, it takes a village to grow a child. Now, it becomes much easier when you have a formalized process to help assist in that, molding of the youths. When you make it not just a family event, but a community event, the children growing in that community, they embrace it stronger. Together, they are together learning what it is to be a female growing into adulthood, a male growing into adulthood, what it takes, what it constitutes. First of all, what does it mean to be an adult? It means that you are now responsible, not just for yourself, but for your family and your community. So these are some of the principles that are shared and taught through the rites of passage programs. Royal Empresses.
I was
Okay.
just sitting here. Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Amber.
No, I was just thinking, and you all may have some remembrance of some things that your family may have practiced. I was just sitting here thinking, what are some of the things that maybe my family held on to, generation after generation that has connections to our ancestry. And really and truly, I can't think of anything right now other than, a lot of why I know what I know and I embrace my culture on a deeper level is because of their awareness, but there was never really any concrete information that was taught to me that I ended up having to learn on my own. But there was an essence and an energy, the spirit guided me through my family, by embracing it. My mother's always collected African artifacts in our home and drums. Instruments of those things, of different cultures. My grandmother, my first African attire my grandmother sold in her salon. And, but I was wondering, like, are there any practices that we held on to? And I can't think of any. Do you all have any remembrance of anything that you can say, you know what, now that I've learned more about myself and my people, I can remember some of these practices that maybe are ancestral. Do you all
Well, I
have
have
your
one.
own?
I have
Mm-hmm.
one that I can identify, and that
Mm-hmm.
is
Have
the
one to
Anansi story.
storytelling. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the Anansi story.
Oh
We
yes,
grew up
yes.
we grew up on the Anansi stories in the islands. And as we know, it's an African concept, an African practice
Mm-hmm.
of sharing messages, passing on knowledge of, um, you know, historical happenings, things like that has been passed on using Anansi,
Mm-hmm.
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 and that is one thing I can identify. But you're right, there is not
Hmm.
much that we have
But
held on to from that time.
but
I don't know if
Right.
anyone else have any,
I would
input.
say hair braiding. Um,
True, true.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
from a very young age, every little girl have her braids, whether it whatever type of cornrow, whether it's four, whether it's eight, whether it's a style, and the styles even today is
The
getting more
beads. The
or
beads.
yeah, and the
Mm-hmm.
beads, right. But the style, the braiding styles that they have come up with, I have seen nothing like it before. It is so beautiful, when you see these little girls, young ladies with their hair braided. I think what got lost with that is when they came
Mm-hmm.
up with that weave thing. But
Right.
this generation, I've noticed even from the last 2 years, this generation of young women, they are twisting their hair and it's long. It might be a
Yes.
little weave, but they are braiding and they're doing a lot
Yes.
more Afrocentric styles rather than, that straight,
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you see,
style.
you see how quick you went to braiding, and we
Mhm.
jump right over locks. Locks is an African tradition. It's not a Western tradition.
True.
Locks in Africa for millennia have symbolized high spiritual consciousness.
But
Yes.
Locks.
and you're right, but you see, for us, the female energy, I remember sitting down and they use that iron comb just to take some of the knots
No,
out
you're
and then
totally
they
right.
braid
I
you up,
remember.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. So on our end, we see it as not necessarily the locks, but the braid, the cornrows, because you remember there were always messages in the cornrows. Hair was
True.
braided a certain way to give a certain message to certain people, so that the slave masters could not understand. They didn't know. They didn't know what the Bantu knots. They didn't know what
Maps
that
and
means.
stuff.
You
Yeah.
know. So
Mm-hmm.
the braiding
I've heard,
for me is it.
right. I've heard also that we used to store rice in our hair too,
Yeah.
so that we could eat,
Correct.
once on the, some at some time on the journey, and that
Mm-hmm.
the braid style was a map also, you know.
Correct.
And when you think
Bringing back
about
the
it
locks
too,
again. I will
right,
jump
right, right, right.
I'll
Mm-hmm,
jump back into the locks again to say many of us, when we
mm-hmm.
landed on the shores of the islands, when we
Mm-hmm.
landed in the Western Hemisphere, a lot of our ancestors had locks. In
Mm-hmm.
Jamaica, it is known that what they did in Kingston, in the region of Bakawal, because Bakawal, where Rastafari originated, that wall was the wall that they lined up the slaves against and displayed them for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Before lining them up against the wall, what they did was to shave their locks and oil them up, oil up their bodies and everything before displaying them. Now,
Right.
the colonizers realized that those people that carried locks were harder to break, were harder to
Mm-hmm.
manage than the average person that didn't possess the locks. Or, for instance, for those that had the braids and the nappy hair, the
Mm-hmm.
locks people seem to have a higher consciousness of
Right.
themselves, and
Right.
were harder to break. Uh, I am emphasizing this because most people in the West, they only understand locks either as a style or as an identity, but it
Mm-hmm.
goes way deeper than that. Rastafari.
And truly, when I first started, I of course I grew up seeing the locks, right? And many ones would have them for different reasons. When I was younger, mostly though, they would be worn by Rasta men. I didn't see many women in my youth wearing them. So when I became a teenager and I started learning more about my ancestry and, Afrocentricity, I studied about the Mau Mau in Kenya. And so that took me a little deeper as to why the locks were called dreads, because the Mau Mau tribe in Kenya, they were warriors and they wore their hair in locks, more of the free form, thick locks, because again, being warriors, their position was to be seen as freedom fighters, not being bound by any I guess you would call it grooming, you know? And so that was really my first deeper, on a deeper level, introduction into locks, instead of
Mm-hmm.
like now how you go and you get them twisted and they're neat and, which, hey, it's okay as well because it's okay to keep them groomed, but that was my first introduction of the Mau Mau tribe, of Kenya when I, took it a little deeper in the locks. But now, we're coming into greater knowledge and understanding of the power of our hair and why our hair stands up high towards the sun instead of falling straight like the oppressors and the colonizers wanted us to wear our hair, you know, because it's when you think about straight hair, it's limp. When you think about permed hair, it's powerless. It's been dyed and fried and we're using all these chemicals and things, but our hair, when if you think about it, when you go out, if your hair is uncovered, you can feel the sun communicating with your scalp. You can feel your hair coiling up, as if there were antennas, which they are. So hair is powerful, and like you said, priest, the locks in particular have a very strong meaning and representation.
There
And I
is
think it's
also
important.
The Watutsi tribe of Africa, a nomadic tribe that also wore locks. In South
Mm-hmm.
Africa, the southern region, you have a whole Bantu tribe that for them, locks is a very sacred and spiritual symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Just to share a quick story before I would like to hear from our royal historian. Um, One of my brethren, when he first went to Africa, he visited South Africa first before anywhere else. On his first visit, he met a queen, what they call a spiritual mama. Now, he brought back pictures. The picture I saw, she sat on a high chair and her locks was let down and spread out on a woven mat. Very long locks. When I say very long locks, very long locks. And my brethren said in his encounter with her, the first thing she asked him was, "What has taken you all so long to return?" She says, "We all been waiting on you all."
Mm-hmm.
Because he had locks. He was a Rastafari. He was a spiritual person. And it's not an everyday thing, especially back then. It was not popular like it is today, where it has become a style or an identity.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, it was still very sacred. It was very, it was rare. So, and we pay the price for carrying those locks. As you all know, we were marginalized in our society here in the West. Rastafari, as soon as you ras up, your parents rejected you, ran you out of the house. That's why Rastafari became encampments. That's why around the island of Jamaica, you had several encampments where Rastafari were housed because we were
Wow.
chased out of our community, out of our homes, rejected by society. We lived on the fringes. of
Mm.
the society. See, because of those very locks. One songwriter, Raskabi, penned a song. Long hair freaky people need not apply. No one will nigga, no Rastafari. That's how the
Mhm.
society saw us until they didn't see us that way anymore, until songwriters and cultural ambassadors like the Honorable Robert Nesta Marley came on the scene, the Honorable Peter McIntosh, the Honorable Bonnie Livingston Whaler. When brethren like that took up the mantle and started to travel and spread the word, that's when the locks and Rastafari became more um, tolerated. I won't say acceptable,
Mm.
tolerated,
Mm.
because I'm going to share something. Just the other day, I attended the graduation at the Haile Selassie First High School. We are part of
Mm.
the supporters of, they call us the Friends of Haile Selassie First. So I was
Mhm.
invited as a special guest to the graduation. And in reasoning with the new principal who has taken over since January,
Powerful woman.
Principal Jones, she said to me, you know, as much as things have changed, things have remained the same. She said today, even though Rastafari has, it seems like we have more acceptance, it's not really so. She
Mm.
says the society of Jamaica still has a certain resentment for Rastafari. And she gave me an example. She said before she took that job, um, she applied for another post somewhere else. And the person that interviewed her happened to be an old schoolmate. And the first thing he asked her before starting the interview is, when since you take up that thing? When since you,
Wow.
yeah, and he was
Mm.
referring to her locks and her appearance. When did she become Rastafari then, or
Free.
Rastafari inclined? So she's saying, and this is one of her peers who she would not have expected it from.
Mm.
So she used that as an example to show how much there is still an
Right.
underlying resentment for I and I within the societies because they still fear the power of the locks. Honorable
Wow.
Empress Cindy, haven't heard your voice.
Yes, I on the topic of conversation with locks or dreadlocks, if you will. Um, there is also a spiritual significance of dreadlocks in Ghana. There's a ceremony that takes place, a traditional priesthood ceremony among the Akan people, and it carries a spiritual meaning. And the significance of the hair depends on the specific context and spiritual practice, distinguishing it from purely aesthetic or fashionable styles. For example, spiritual significance for priests in Ghana, the Kamfo priests among the Khan ethnic group. Kamfo priests, traditional priests, grow their hair into dreadlocks, which are known as, I don't want to hurt the word, so I'm just gonna say how I read it. It's
Yes,
called
I.
Mpesi Pesi. This is
Mm-hmm.
done in honor of the legendary founder of the Ashanti Kingdom, Akomfonochi.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Um, for some spiritual leaders, wearing dreadlocks is a mandatory but temporary commitment after a period of 7 to 13 years of devotion. They may
True.
hold a ceremony to cut their hair. However, if they choose to remain in a higher spiritual state, they may keep their locks.
True.
You hear that? You see
Traditionally,
what she just
dreadlocks
said?
True.
Very important. Go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
Empress.
Traditionally and traditionally, dreadlocks in Ghana have been a way to identify those who are studying for the traditional priesthood or for those born with special spiritual gifts. The
Mm.
phenomenon the phenomenon of Dada children, natural
Mm-hmm.
locks. Some children are born with naturally locked hair, and among the Akan, these children are also referred to as Mpesipes. They are
Mm,
believed to be naturally gifted with spiritual powers. In some
mm.
West African spiritual beliefs, such children are considered to be specially gifted by water deities.
Wow.
Mm. See how powerful, how powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I give thanks you brought in that whole Akan concept because, you know, some time ago, not too long
Beautiful.
ago, I was having a conversation with a royal priest from the Melchizedek order, Bobo Ashanti. And because and I have to reason about this. It's something private, but still it needs to be public because people need to have an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
We were discussing because the priest, when he came into the order, there is a way about us in Jamaica. We chop up names and chop up words and create our own kind of expression.
Mm.
We tend to do that a lot. So for Bobo, it became Bobo Shanti. And because from he came into the Livity, that's what he been hearing, Bobo Shanti. When he saw me, I did some writing and he saw me use the full name, Bobo Ashanti, he was taken aback. He was saying that that's not our name. Our name
Mm-hmm.
is Shanti. That's what he's heard our father use and once use and all of that. And it became a little kind of a stickler within the conversation, because he was holding strong to the fact that we are Bobo Shanti, not Bobo Ashanti. Now, Shanti, and he gave me a Sanskrit definition for Shanti, because within the African culture, Shanti has a different meaning. Shanti refers to a form of hut, a form of um, don't even want to say rundown house, but in Jamaica, that's what shanty means. A shanty is a old hut, almost a discarded building. Then. Now,
Mm.
it has no historical relevance. Ashanti is the name. And when you listen to King Emmanuel's interview, and he's explaining when the interviewer asked him, where did the name Bobo Ashanti come from? He explained to him that it was when the Africans saw I and I, Rastafari, with our locks and, in our apparel, they automatically call us Bobo and Ashanti because we reminded them of those two ethnic groups. So what the Empress just read a while ago goes back to the history of where the word originated, the Ashanti people, and it was the spiritual members of the Ashanti tribe that adorned locks. And as everyone knows, Bobo Ashanti, or as it is what you'd say affectionately known, Bobo Shanti, we are a very spiritual people. We are a priesthood order based on the Melchizedek priesthood, and we are not part-time. It's a part of us. It's something you grow into, you become. It's not a title, it's not a practice, it is a way of life, just as expressed by Empress Cindy in what she just shared with us. So I just wanted to really, share that with the listening audience and the cast, you know, because we tend to be misled through this colonial vibration. And the part of this, changing of the name is trying to re-identify ourselves. But in changing certain words, we still have to go back to the origin. the
Mm-hmm.
root origin. Shanti has no historical, spiritual, or cultural relevance to us as an African, but Ashanti, the entire world knows the Ashanti culture because it is a rich culture that existed from antiquity and still going strong today. Royal Empresses.
My Lord, just to add to what you just uttered, right? You highlighted, that it's an ancient Sanskrit word. And it's funny that you mentioned that because when I was pregnant with Yeshimabet, my kingman and I were looking for names, and he fell in love with the name Shanti. So the word Shanti is a Hindu or Sanskrit word meaning peace or inner peace.
Right.
Exactly. So I just think that this goes to show that this is something that we as Bobo Ashanti practice.
Mm-hmm.
We should continue to practice this, but it's a powerful meaning, in and of itself. So I just wanted to share that.
Yes, and the fact that it exists also in the Sanskrit, because we must understand with the knowledge now available to us, it was the Africans who migrated from the continent of Africa, going along the Silk Roads up into Asia and then into Europe that brought these cultures. It was the African who established the first Asian culture within where they call today India. So even the Hindu foundation of Hinduism still has a link to the African culture.
Mm-hmm.
Most natural.
Even in wearing the locks as well.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and these things our children need to be taught. These knowledge needs to be infused in a curriculum that is taught to the children in schools. Because if children understand their history, they won't be acting in the confused state that they are
Right.
today. You
Right.
see the boys walking around ill dressed, pants sagging, all kinds of different crazy things that they take as style and trends, instead of trying to emulate the great emperor who even the Ebony Black magazine and the Jet magazine gave, presented the title of being the most well-dressed leader of his time. He gained that title. He was bestowed that title several times within his tenure. And that has been the African way. We are people of principle. We carry ourselves in an upright way. That's why we adorn ourselves in robes, turbans. You understand the kind of regala that we wear. It has always been that way with us. The colorfulness of how we adorn ourselves. We present ourselves in a impeccable manner. They say cleanliness is godliness. So in presenting yourselves in a uniform way,
Mm-hmm.
you are highlighting that divine consciousness within. Just like how your locks, the locks is an outward expression of an inner consciousness. That's what locks is. It's an outward expression of an inner consciousness, which today ones have devalued by making it a mere style. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding rites of passage is very important because through rites of passage, we are able to pass on these knowledge of the Akan tribe and their cultural way of life, the Bobo tribe and their cultural way of life. Because Bobo also exists, there's a ethnic group called Bobo who also exists in that region where the Ashanti people reside. And there is also Bobo again in Benin. And when you check their history, they're attached. It's just migration across the continent that brought Bobo from one region to another. It's just like the Maasai, the Watutsi, and the Hutu. They came from the Watutsi originally. All these ethnic groups originated through migration because, as we know, civilization began along the Nile Valley and along the Congo Basin. Those are the two main regions of Africa that that um, that fostered human development. Because in ancient time, we gathered where the land was fertile. The Congo Basin is along that Congo River, you know, the what they call the lungs of Africa, which is a very fertile area. And the Nile Valley, the Rift Valley, is another very fertile area. And as history records, that is where the stone culture began, where the first set of farming tools were created, and the whole concept of agriculture was developed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying all that to say our culture is intertwined as a people, and it's through research that we can unearth these things. Again, in saying this, I must send, you know, tribute and respect to the great late Renoko Rashidi, God bless his soul, who traveled the world and penned the knowledge of where Africans' footprint are left. He established the reality that the African culture has a footprint in every modern area of human development. And he had pictures and other evidence to prove this. He usually show a slideshow. We have brought him to Florida several times to the community, myself and my brethren, to this community to edify us. And he always travels with a PowerPoint presentation, a slide presentation, where he's showing you places that I have never even heard of, where he has gone and found the footprint of Africans. Clear depiction of Africans. He's showing you the imagery. It might be blended with an indigenous sect of people, meaning that we didn't look totally Negroid, but you could see the Africanness in those different ethnic groups. And when you hear their history, you identify that yes, their ancestors migrated out of Africa before the Great Ice Age and established themselves in those various regions. So the culture of the earth is built on the African concept.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how they've tried to write it out of history, hide it, we give thanks for brothers like Rashidi, John Henry Clark, J.A. Rogers, you know, and many more who did the work that we have the knowledge we have today. Yes, I.
I wanted to highlight, just in case ones don't have this knowledge. I have a friend who lives in Ghana, um, and I was telling him about my former teacher, and I wanted to expound whenever we opened up the floor to talk about the rites of passage, because the rites of passage that I experienced was from a priest from Ghana. Um, and so it was in the Akan way. But he mentioned that it's important to know that the word Ashanti, the way that is spelled, that we most common see it, Ashanti, is the European way, and to be mindful that It is actually spelled Asante. So that's the difference in the way that the spelling goes, is that Ashanti with an I on the end and H in the middle is more of the English way, and Asante, Asante, is the origin. Are ones aware of that?
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because that is factual. That's what I was told as well.
Okay.
Um, so yes, that you're the person who you're talking about, he gave you correct knowledge because that's what I learned as well.
Right. Yes, and he
Hmm.
still lives there on the continent. I actually spoke with him about possibly coming to our meetings on Sunday to teach us Chi. And so we'll see if that happens. But he sort of argued with me because I was sharing with him that my former teacher, he's deceased now, Dr. Corbina Ashanti, um he taught me again that this was the spelling. I never knew that it was Asant, but I brought his name up and I shared his information online, and he was real quick to correct me in the spelling. He's very particular about the culture, but we need those kind of I guess corrections, as we take this journey to really dig deep and know the truth you know and so, priest, whenever you're ready, I would love to share my story in the rites of passage.
Go ahead. I will just say one thing before you do. My experience, my first experience with rites of passage came through the Yoruba people because I
Mm-hmm.
am kind of intertwined with the Yoruba group here in the West that reside in South Carolina, where they have a village. And I know the king and his family for many years. And I was invited to one of the senior priests' sons' rites of passage. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I really experienced the ceremony itself, and all that it entails. And part of that ceremony, we who were invited, we had to pledge to be part of that youth's life, eternally as mentors, which is part of what the ceremony requires and why select amount of us were invited. So I'm saying they chose specific individuals that they saw as having a level of consciousness and um, a divine presence to be part of this youth's life. So each of us had to give him a talk, give him, words of upliftment, you know, guidance, as he entered that moment into adulthood. Go ahead, Empress. You can now share your story.
Oh, give thanks, give thanks. um so ones when young ones going off to graduating from high school, and we were brought up to further our education um to secondary or college level. The discussion is always around family. So when you go, what sorority you going to pledge, or what fraternity you going to pledge, and I grew up thinking like, okay, well, you see certain groups growing up, you see, the Greek fraternities, more specifically. You see the deltas, and you see the alphas, and the sigma gamma rhos, and so for myself, you look at each group and you're sizing them up, and you think, me in my young mind, I was thinking, hey, red is my favorite color. I think, I think, I want to pledge Delta. not really knowing any history about them really. But, in my childlike mind, I thought, well, red is my favorite color. And, I think that would be the one. So for me, went off to school. I went to a predominantly white university, North Carolina State University is where I went. And when I got there and, started gaining a little bit of knowledge of self, hanging out with ones who were on the same path, trying to figure yourself out. I remember it was probably my first or second year in, I decided that I no longer wanted my perm. I knew that early on, right? I come from a family of women who are cosmetologists on both sides of my family, the matriarch and my father's side. Both my mothers and grandmothers are hairstylists, but I knew early on that that was probably going to be the first thing that I freed myself of was permed hair. And so when I went off to school, that was really my first rights for myself, I would say, freeing myself from the chemicals in my hair. And I started looking, I still had in my mind that I wanted to join a sorority. Um, but again, hanging out with ones who started sharing information with me about Africa and liberating ourselves and freeing ourselves up, I very soon, quickly decided that that wasn't it. And I was blessed and grateful to discover an African fraternity that I had never ever heard existed on any campus. And it was Kemetic Banu Order. And Kemetic Banu Order was very shocking to me, and we talked about early on, priest, being a bit nervous, because we hear things about Africa and African spirituality, and you know these are things that you should be very careful. When you go off to school, you're told to focus on this, focus on that, keep this, keep that. And religion and Christianity and certain things were part of it. But no one ever told me that I wasn't Greek. No one ever shared that with me, and
Mhm.
so when I discovered an African fraternity, I put away some of those fears. I was like, no, this is me, and looking back on, my journey with learning about Rastafari and listening to Bob and, Peter Tosh and others, who were talking about, Afrocentricity and Black liberation. I said, this must be it. This must be it. And so, to make a long story short, I embraced it. And it was a fraternity of young, knowledgeable, knowledge seeking Black men and women, you know, and
Mhm.
Dr. Corbina Ashanti um, really taught us some deep things. I look back on it because I
Mhm.
don't talk about it much, but I'm grateful for this moment because it's like, it's like full circle. You know, when we talk about being reborn in the Christian church, really when you find yourself, John, that is the real rebirth. You know what I'm saying?
That's the
And as a
part.
young woman, you know, gaining this information, it was profound for me, and the first step was to change my name. That was the first order of the day, you know,
Mhm.
that you need to change your name. You need
Mhm.
to establish who you want to be because that's the power of the name. Who do you want to be? And already who are you? So that self-discovery was necessary, and then
Mhm.
every member had to change their name to an African name. And the elder, Dr. Shanti being, one who has studied, he sort of could look at each of the youth and say, you look as if you come from this tribe and this tribe and that tribe. And, so he taught us to really study ourselves So that on this journey, because that's another thing to point out, is that because Africa is so vast, you have so many different tribes and cultures. And again, as Empress Trisha showed these pictures, it's just amazing to me. You know, it's a beautiful thing, but it's very difficult for us to figure ourselves out, you know, because we don't know, you know, on this side of the world in the West, we don't know, you know, where we really truly come from. But Dr. Ashanti told me that he said, you look like you may be, you know, a woman from Nigeria. And I was like, okay, let's see here. You know, so we started studying, you know, it was our responsibility to start studying the different groups, you know. So again, that opened me up, you know, but along my journey, what I gravitated towards were the Maasai.
All right.
Yes.
Mm.
And that's where me and Empress Trisha we connect there, you know.
Warrior
Um,
queens, man. Warrior
yes,
queens. Hmm.
yes, you know, with the beading, you know, that's one thing that I love doing. I love beading, you know. And
Hmm.
again, learning myself helped me to identify, you know. I haven't done any, you know, ancestral studies, like as far as, you know, how ones now do the blood
Yeah,
work
yeah.
and all that
Hmm.
stuff. I haven't done that, but I've just been guided by spirit. You know, I have several Maasai necklaces. I have the cloths that they drape themselves in. I love the Maasai dance. You know, I'm just connected. So, as far as the name goes, my original name is Kimberly Nicole. Okay. In my journey, in my search for a new name, I first studied the name that was given to me. And I was blown away by the fact that I found a name that aligned with it so well. And so my name, my rebirth name is Akim Naja Titilayo or
Hmm.
Titilayo. Now, Titilayo is Yoruba, because again, trusting the guidance of the elder, I was like, okay, let me see, you know. And so Titilayo means eternal happiness. And I was like, that sounds like me. Again, in my youth mind, you know. Um, but along the journey, I changed Titilayo to Nyabingi because again, I have grown and learned myself more.
Hmm.
So I go by Akim Naja Nyabingi. And Akim means God will establish. Kimberly means from the royal fortress. Again, my middle name, Nicole, victory of the people, and Naja, second born success. So I continue to go by, which I still love my birth name. I think they were intentional with that as well. But overall, I say that I am the chief ruler of the royal fortress established by God. And
Oh,
when, yes, I give thanks, you know, because it gives me something to live up to. And that's why it's so important that even ones who have the knowledge but yet have not changed their names, you know, even if you don't do it legally, you know, when you go through that rebirth of saying, let me figure out who I am really and truly, let me shed this false doctrine that I've been having to force, you know, I've had to force myself into. It helps you to walk differently. You know, it changes your perspective, you know, and it gives you purpose. And, you know, it's so important that we, with our children, you know, also make sure that their names are purposeful. You know, I give thanks to my children. I was intentional about this as well. My former husband, my ex-husband, he's from Congo, Africa, and throughout my whole pregnancy, I was very intentional about what I would name my children. And they're living up to it, you know, because you know word sound is a vibration. So when you call on their name, you know, they have to stand in that position, you know. And so ones who are
Hmm.
listening, you know, give your children, instead of these little nicknames, give them powerful names that when you call them, they walk in that vibration, you know,
And
and
you
when
are so
others,
right. I must.
right.
I'm gonna just add a little thing to what you're saying. I have a tribe of children, and we named all our children African names.
Mm-hmm.
That's just I and I. But I have a son called Akeem. Now, Akeem
Mm.
is a warrior. That's the whole definition of Akeem. And oh gosh, man, I'm almost sorry I gave him that African because he lives up to that name. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So word sound is power. And that's why we have to return to our native language because the power that we get when we speak an African language, we do
Mm.
not get when we speak the colonizer's language. Our prayers have a different essence when spoken in English, Latin, and those other languages. When you hear the Lord's Prayer in Amharic,
Mm.
it does something to you that the Lord's Prayer in English does. And until you experience that, you will not know what I am saying. It's like growing up, you know the story about Alibaba and the 40 Thieves and the cave where they had their hideout. And when he came up to the rock, he would say the right combination of words and the rock would open and let him in and so forth. It's that's they are using our own science, teaching us in bits and pieces. We just have to decipher it. When we speak our language and we are in the process of conjuring,
Mm.
if we don't know the right words to string together, to combine, we are not getting the effect that we are seeking. When
So
you
true.
know your language and you understand the spiritual essence of your livity, you can speak words like when, okay, for instance, in English, we chant the Psalms. Chanting the Psalms is totally different from reading the Psalms. When you chant the Psalms, it increases the vibration of the words. So
Mm-hmm.
you get a different energy from it. Not saying when you read it, there is not power in the reading of it. I am just sharing another aspect of it, which is to say, when you chant it, I am not saying singing. Singing is
Mm.
different. Chanting is encanting. When
Mm-hmm.
you chant the Psalms, you place an energy, a vibration within those words that increases its force, increases its presence in our midst.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it. Ras Ivi attended one of our services that we held in Brooklyn many some years ago. Mama Desta organized a Marcus Garvey program. It was like a 2 day, 2 or 3 day program. But I and I, as Bobo Ashanti, we were given the privilege to host the Sabbath service.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nyabingi Brethren, led by Rasaibai, they came a little bit early for their evening session and had the opportunity of partaking in our service. And he stated later on that it was his first opportunity of experiencing a Bobo Ashanti service. And in the evening, he was making a presentation to a full capacity auditorium. And he was saying how glorified he was to attend the service. And he said, while he was in the service, there was no way anyone could tell him that he was not presently in Axum, experiencing the essence of that Axum ancient ceremony. because the way that I and I as Bobo Ashanti chant, and it's the chanting now, not so much the singing of the hymns we are talking
Mm-hmm.
about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was speaking to when the seven golden candlesticks are on that altar, chanting in synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
There is an essence that it creates. There is a vibration, a sensation that it generates that takes you back in time. And that's what happened
Indeed.
to not just Rasaibai, but the brethren and sisters that came with him. They all said the same thing because at the end of the service, several of them who are familiar with I surrounded I and was saying, "Wow, what whatever they were saying, endearing words to say,
Mm-hmm.
wow, this was a great experience." Seeing, and it was because of that essence. Now, take it a bit further. Just imagine I and I, the seven golden candlesticks, chanting in an African tongue.
Right.
Just the imagination of it is putting goosebumps on me.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine that energy, that frequency, and when we know the power of the words that we are
Right.
chanting, we can open up portals in time. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what we are lacking right now. The science, the African sacred science. We have lost the knowledge of that. And
Right.
that is what we are trying to reclaim and recapture in this space and time of I and I liberty. Yes, Empresses.
I'm so proud of my son because he is taking his father's language to a deeper level, and that's what the youth supposed to do. When you pour into your youth properly, they become your teachers. You have to first teach them. My son is now advanced beyond me, you know, and now he's teaching me. But, in Congo, they speak Lingala. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so now my son is taking it even further. He's learning Kikongo,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going on the scavenger
I
hunt, I would
love that.
say.
Sorry, I do. I really do.
I do too. I'm so proud of him, because I mean, and rightfully so, that's what he's supposed to be doing. And then he's teaching us, he's teaching his father about himself. That's why it's so important that we pour into our children, because then they will take care of us and pour it into us. My son is
Prophecy
telling him,
fulfilling. Prophecy
right,
fulfilled. It says a little child shall lead the way.
shall lead the way, give thanks. Yes, because he's also, you mentioned we talking about language, and he is telling me, that, one thing about our African languages in comparison to, English, is that a lot of these words that we use don't even exist in the
Don't
African
even exist
languages.
in African language.
Yeah, and they
Exactly.
hold a very weak vibration as well. So when we talk about spelling, a lot of our words do cast spells. So to now learn,
Exactly.
yes. And so when he breaks that
Love
down,
it.
I'm like, wow, yes, yes, yes. And then it was confirmed even in class today, because I hold so many conversations with our students. So I have students from Honduras in one class, and then there's students in the same class from maybe Mexico and El Salvador. And so oftentimes I know a little bit of Spanish, and I'll be like, como se dice, como se dice, I will say car. I'm just using an example. Como se dice car in Espanol? And so I'm asking them, how do you say car in Spanish or any other term? And one student from Honduras may say one way, whereas a student who speaks Spanish as well from Mexico may say it a different way. And I think today I was asking them, how do you say cool? How you may say, you're such a cool person. I wanted to tell one of my students, you're such a cool person. He's from Honduras. Very knowledgeable young man too. And so I wanted to tell him that he was cool. And so I asked one student who's from Honduras, how do you say it? And then the other student who speaks Spanish but from Mexico said it doesn't even exist in their language. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is what my son is teaching me. Some of these words that we use can't be translated because they don't even exist. And so learning the African language You know, there are many of them, but learning the African language is very important because it will eliminate a lot of these words that we use, you know,
For the
and it's
Again,
strength.
and that brings us back to the rites of passage. That is how we are gonna regain the knowledge of our African selves. Part of that
right.
rites of passage has to be a linguistic class,
That's true.
linguistic education. You know, there are languages, there are dominant languages on the continent that if you speak that one language, you are able to communicate with many different tribes, even though you don't speak the fullness of their language, of their dialect.
Mm-hmm.
And these are some of the things that we need to learn by interacting with our African brothers.
So
And I've
true.
seen how easy it is because I'm speaking to the Honorable Priest Barissa Babu in Ethiopia. And while he's speaking to me, people are coming along and they're greeting him. And I'm hearing him blah, 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 in Amharic. Now, the Honorable Priest left the West here some years ago, speaking only English. And he speaks Amharic fluently and not just speaks it, but sounds just like an Ethiopian.
Mm.
So it is something that we all can do, and we all are not going to be drawn to Amharic. That's
Right.
like what you said earlier. You have to go by faith. You
Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
all not going to be drawn to the same state. Our navel string wasn't cut exactly in the same place. So some of us will feel a strong pull from one region, while another feel a strong pull from another region.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
we follow that pull, you will
That's
find a
right.
fulfillment. Yeah, man, you will find a fulfillment that you didn't know exist. Because what you will do, you will discover the essence of your being. A lot of questions that you have in your mind that you have not been able to answer, all of a sudden just start to reveal themselves because you are there, you're learning the language, you're hearing the language, you're feeling the vibration from the language, and there's something different that it's doing to you.
Mm.
See?
Okay.
But
And so I think I must congratulate you. I must agree with what you're doing because even though you might be just
I'm not hearing you
Okay, yeah,
clearly,
I'm not hearing
Empress.
you clearly. Mm-hmm.
can you hear me? No,
Go ahead.
I'm playing Empress at him and most
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing. Because although you're teaching a specific subject, you still try to integrate the culture of your culture and the culture of the students,
Oh
and
yes.
that everyone can understand exactly what each other is saying, and that's noble because I have found that a lot of teachers, because one of the things that they do here in the island is they bring in teachers from different places to teach. And
Mm.
a set of teachers from the continent came in about a year or two ago. And it's just amazing that although you may be a math, English reading, science teacher, that you don't incorporate your language.
Mm.
Even if
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
you have them
Mm-hmm.
say good morning, good afternoon, how
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
may I that,
Yes.
in your native language. And that's a way of you also still teaching them the curriculum which is required,
Right.
but still teaching them of themselves. Because you can also, I mean, like you say, you have Mexican students, you can incorporate different things, have them teach
Right.
other. And if our teachers do that, then what children or students will learn better
And
because
It's
broaden their
true.
scope of
It's
understanding.
true. It's
there was
true.
there's a young I'm at an elementary school now. I manage a cafeteria and a young boy, he had to be at least 6, 7 years old. He came in and he wanted a cup to get some water, but he couldn't translate that to me. And another
Mm.
student said, well, he doesn't speak English. Now, the little Espanol that I know, I spoke to him.
Agua? Agua?
The little Spanish, you know.
The little son. So, no, I asked him,
Espanol.
I asked him, ¿se habla inglés? And he
Mhm.
said, no, español. So
Mhm.
I told him who I was. I said, me llamo, um,
Whatever.
it's Taylor, and I asked him who he was in Spanish, and then he told me who he was. And I asked him, I didn't know remember how to say cup, but I showed him the cup,
Right.
agua, like you said, and so if things like that do happen in the school system, because
Mm.
to it needs to be incorporated into the school system, yes, but we know that it's not. We have been fighting for nearly 30 years just to get VI culture into the schools. So if you're fighting 30 years, so 20 plus years to get VI culture, definitely you're not going to get African culture in no time soon.
Right.
If the teachers with the knowledge,
You,
simple
you
words,
have you know the, do you understand the
simple words.
concept of cross pollination?
Mhm.
Mhm,
Mhm.
correct. And
Mhm.
Okay.
just the simple things, just the simple words a teacher can learn, and have your students come in every day. Or hola,
Right. Right. Right.
how do you
Right.
say hello in Swahili or what have you? And that's learning. That's giving them the opportunity to learn a different language. They don't have to wait to go to Spanish,
Right.
to learn Spanish. They can learn different language. It is in the classroom also. Numbers, you
You
can
know,
a math teacher, teach them numbers.
Right. Right.
you know
Right.
what I found out not too long ago. I was reasoning with the Honorable um, Rupert Lewis, his wife. His wife is a Trinidadian, according to what they tag her with. She's from Trinidad. She's an African from Trinidad. They call her a Trinidadian. Anyway, she specializes in linguistics.
Mm.
And what she found or what she discovered and shared with us is that a lot of our patois words in Jamaica have African origins.
Mhm.
Definitely,
Mhm.
definitely.
Just like, oh, when you hear the Cuban music have a
Mhm.
direct link to Africa.
Mm.
So there is cross
So true.
cultures that have happened, but we have not identified or highlighted it until now because we have been following the colonizers' curriculum.
Yeah.
It's just in these last, I would say, 30 years that
Mhm.
ones have started to look beyond the trappings of what we were taught and starting
Mhm.
to see, a greater knowledge of self. But I wanted to backtrack a little bit. I'm Pesa Kim. Myself and my bridge here, Jabalani, we had the privilege of lecturing at North Carolina University several times
State or
during
UNC Charlotte in Charlotte?
both.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
because we were on the circuit for a moment. We were lecturing along the coast, Warren Wilson University, there in Asheville, Columbia, many universities along the coast. But
Wow.
because you brought up North Carolina, and we
Mhm.
were invited there by the Caribbean Association.
Okay. Mhm.
Yeah, during Black
Wow.
History Month is when we were, we got a lot of our work.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
when was this? When was this?
This was in the, I'd say, from about 207 coming down the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we were on the circuit for about 5 years or so. That's where I met a lot of the um, Black historians that were still
Mhm.
alive at that time.
Mhm.
You know, um, And that's when I formed a lot of relationships with people like Baba Leonard Jeffries and James Small,
Mm-hmm.
Claude Anderson, our sister Joy DeGrue that you hear. Yeah, we all
Mm-hmm.
crossed paths during that time,
Wow.
attended each other's, presentations, So I just wanted to infuse that to say in during that time, I'm going to use an example.
Mm-hmm.
Warren Wilson University in Asheville, North Carolina. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
unique university. Now, it doesn't have a large student population. I think at the time it was somewhere about 800 students, but a lot of them were international students, came from
Mm-hmm.
overseas. So when we did our presentation, the title was Stolen Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
The day after the lecture, they invited us back for brunch, lunch, whatever you want to call it. They set a big table in their cafeteria, a big round table where we all sat. They put us at the head of the table, and the students sat on the side, the different sides, and we had a conversation. Each of them introduced themselves and told us where they were from, why they attended that, chose to attend that university, and so forth and so on. Now, it's a very cultural university. At the time, I cannot speak to
Mm-hmm.
presently because I haven't been there in about maybe 9, 8 years. Um, but back then was a very cultural university. All the buildings on the property were constructed by the students
Wow.
using using eco-friendly materials.
Mm-hmm.
All the food that was served in the cafeteria was grown on the property. And on the property they used two horses, two Clydesdale. I don't know if people know what Clydesdale horses are. Those are those big horses that have
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
hairs on their foot and unique
Mm-hmm.
looking horses. They had two beautiful ones that they used to plow the field using those
Wow.
old ancient plows. Okay. They also had a tractor, but that tractor only ran on biodiesel that was created from the waste of the kitchen, all the food peelings. They
Mm.
had a machine that they put all that food peelings in and created biodiesel. So sometime they would run out of biodiesel and would have to use those horses. I'm saying all that to show you how um, conscious
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
institution was. They
Mm-hmm.
had they had they had these herb huts where students specializing in certain field of study grew herbs, dried them, made salves, tinctures, oils from them
Mm-hmm.
for different ailments and different
Mm-hmm.
uses. See, I'm telling you all this because the day after they toured us, they gave us a nice tour of the school, explaining
Mm-hmm.
the history of the school. On the back end of where they grow the crops was a river. They they identified that river as the third oldest river documented on in the USA. Now, all of this is in their presentation, showing you the eco-friendly way in which they approach things, the sustainable way and independent way in which the facility function. They did not take energy from the grid. Their energy comes from a windmill
Mm-hmm.
farm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I can go on and go on and go on, but they embrace a concept that they learned from I and I.
Mm.
One of their main administrators was a Rastafari sister. She was the wife of my bridging. That is how we got that gig
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to lecture there because of the Empress. She was the wife of my bridging. So she hooked it up. But I'm saying all this to say they learned from I and I, the African, the Rastafari way of life,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Mm-hmm.
created a whole way of living around it. All
Mm-hmm.
their food was organic. They did not use pesticides and insecticides.
Mm-hmm.
We did a
Mm-hmm.
we did a video, myself and my brethren, we did a video of the whole thing. And in that video, when we released it, we said that this model should be duplicated
Mm-hmm.
across the spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
education.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the students that I met students from Ghana, from Taiwan, from all over the world. And they all spoke so proud and happy to have chosen that university. I
Mm-hmm.
met he was almost what, 7 foot, 6 foot, going on to 7 foot basketball player who got a scholarship for, for basketball and chose instead to attend Warren Wilson. And
Mm-hmm.
he said it is the best choice he has ever made because attending the facility, that school, that institution, made him the man that he would have never become because he said he grew up in Brooklyn. And when he came there first, he came with that Brooklyn mentality, that tug, whatever you want to call it, type of
Mm-hmm.
mentality. And he
Mm-hmm.
said it quickly shaped him, whipped him into shape, where
Mm-hmm.
he's not into all of that trending stuff.
Right.
He
Right.
sounds so responsible as a
Mm-hmm.
young person growing into his adulthood. Kind of reasoning that several of the students had with us the morning, we don't normally receive in other um, universities that we have lectured. As a matter
True.
of fact, in some of the other universities, sometimes we have had to control our temper because some of the ignorance that some of the students
Mm-hmm.
presented, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying all that to say that the African rites of passage is a key way of us passing on our principles, our way of life that is so dignified, so different from what we have been taught in the West. Empress Cindy, I see you open your mic. I know you want to chime in.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things I want to chime in about, but one of the things I wanted to mention how Empress Akim was speaking about languages, and the I was speaking about your brethren's wife being a linguistics. Now, me
Mm-hmm.
studying anthropology and knowing, so much things about different cultures and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. One of the things I wanted to mention was an African author by the name of Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He was a Kenyan author and academic who is described as East Africa's leading novelist and an important figure in modern African literature because he believed when he started off writing his books, he was writing his books primarily in English, but because he's such a strong, you know, African nationalist, he believed that switching his writing from English to primarily his ethnic language, which is Kikuyu, and becoming a
Mm-hmm.
strong advocate for literature written in African languages, he was criticized for that. But one of his novels, which is a very wonderful novel, I suggest people go out and read it, is called The River Between.
Mm-hmm.
He's written about colonialism. He's written short stories. He's written children's literature. So he's one author that I really truly admire. He came to the university that I was at the time called Binghamton University. He came to make a lecture there. So yeah, languages is extremely important, especially for youths nowadays because
Mm-hmm.
I just read an article the other day. I forgot where I saw it up on WhatsApp. I think Empress Trisha might have put it up, but there are, dying languages in around the world. And if our elders and our young people are not connecting and the children are not learning these, ancient languages,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna die, off. And then what becomes of that? What becomes
Mm-hmm.
of that culture? It's just a chapter in a book, or somebody who wants to go back and find some ancient cultures, that's when they're gonna be brought to light. So the importance of languages, African languages in particular, are very, very important. And one of the things you mentioned about your students in North Carolina, like the Mexican students and the
Mm-hmm.
Honduras students, that is factual, Empress, because I want to say that even amongst Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, there are
Mm-hmm.
words that Puerto Ricans would say that Dominicans wouldn't say, or that they don't know, and vice versa. So
Right.
even like I had a coworker one time, and we worked at a gym, and there was a pool at the gym, and my coworker is El Salvadorian, so I mentioned the word that I know how to say pool in Spanish, and he laughed at me. He was like, "Oh, that's not how you say pool in Spanish." So I said, "Well, how do you say pool in Spanish?" So he
Mm-hmm.
said what it was. I said, "Okay, that's fair, but
Mm-hmm.
this is how we say it."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
it's just I want to say, I don't know, it's just, I guess, um what can I say about that?
Yeah, you said about.
It'd be the same thing, like how certain African languages, even in Africa, how they have like a pidgin language because they're mixing in
Mm-hmm.
their language along with
Right.
like certain English words.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I would kind
Right.
of say something like similar to that.
It's
And
so
then
true.
what I wanted to say about your name, that's a wonderful thing, for you to look into yourself and really see who you truly are as a woman, and be grateful for the name that you were given, but also choosing the name for yourself. I have another professor who also wrote a book about just that. It's called Call Me by My Rightful Name by
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Isidore Opueko. He's a
Mm.
Nigerian, and he wrote about a young African American man finding his roots in Nigeria and going through all the different facets of learning about himself, and actually
Mm-hmm.
going about changing his name to what he should be rightfully called. And so I find all those things that we discuss very, very important, especially youths nowadays. I was very intentional when I chose the names for my daughters as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I have a family member, just to share a little detail. I have a family member who is not, she's very westernized, and her frame of mind is not, so that she wants to think in like the kind of ways that, say, me and maybe my sister may think of. Because when I was telling her, my daughter's name, she's like, "Well, that name is not going to look good on a resume." And I'm like, "Why not?" And she's like, "Oh, because it just sounds too African." And I'm like, "Well, what is that supposed to mean?" You understand?
Mm.
And is these kind of things that just like make me want to know more, even more
Right.
and more in depth
Right.
about, the meanings of names and stuff like that. And I'm bringing it home because when I got the opportunity to go to Ghana and research what I went there to do, which was a rite of passage, the naming ceremony for babies
Mm-hmm.
when they are
Mm-hmm.
born. I
Mm-hmm.
went there, and we went to the Volta region, and the Volta region primarily has an ethnic group by the name of Ewe or
Mm-hmm.
Eve or Ebe. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so I got to interview a man, and he was, telling me, how the Ewe people go about, pardon me, choosing a baby's name.
Mm-hmm.
The baby actually has three names. They have a Christian name, they
Mm-hmm.
have their cultural name, an ethnic name, and then they have a family name. And the person who chooses the name of the baby is usually an elder in the family. That's how the baby gets their
Right.
name. And when a woman gives birth, they do not show that baby for 8 days. The baby stays
Right.
indoors for 8 days, and then
Mm-hmm.
an announcement is made, in the community to say, okay, we're gonna have this ceremony, and whoever wants to show up, they show up, and then they go about doing the whole ceremony of letting the baby taste like a very strong liquor, and doing various things or whatever. But even that has changed over the years, and they don't give the baby liquor anymore. They changed that to giving the baby water or juice.
Mm.
So you see what I'm
Eight
saying? Like
days too, yes. Those 8
they-
days hard to cut you, but those 8 days also is a process of the name too. They wait 8 days to name the baby as well.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like
Mm-hmm.
after the
Mm-hmm.
eighth day, that's when they go about
Mm-hmm.
naming the baby. But what I'm saying
Right.
is that originally speaking, when naming ceremonies would take place in different Ghanaian or African cultures, the original way of doing it has been kind of like, um, I don't want to say whitewash, but it's been kind of like changed. It's changed, and it's not like how it used to be. So
Mm.
yeah, that's all I have to share for now. Give thanks, my Lord and Empress.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, man, good
So
knowledge.
true.
One thing I
Mm-hmm.
must say for myself,
Mm-hmm.
my given name, my Babylon name, as I call it, as
Mm-hmm.
Rastafari would
Mm-hmm.
say, is Douglas Smith. I have never
Mm-hmm.
liked that name. Sorry. I have never
Mm-hmm.
embraced that name. I never liked that name 1 ounce. From I have been a youth, I have had nicknames that ones call me that I embrace more. And as I grew
Right.
into Rastafari from an early age, everyone knows me as Jadi. I
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
that is I am comfortable with that back then because yeah, it was Smith is not a name, first of all, if
Mhm.
one's understand this. Smith is a trade.
Mm-hmm.
It's more a trade name or a trade description. I came from the Smith plantation. That is obvious where I got
Right.
that name. My family got
Right.
that name. Now, Smith, you have wordsmith, fingersmith, goldsmith, all kinds of Smith. So it shows you it's about a discipline,
Mm-hmm.
but they applied that to I and I because we came from the Smith farm or the Lewis farm or the Brown farm or whatever those are not our names. If we
That's
watch
right.
the movie Roots, we can
Mm-hmm.
get the fullness of understanding of why and how they did what they did.
Right.
Okay.
It's so true.
Douglas is another British name that is a more a title type of thing again as well. So there's no way I could have loved those names and embraced those
Uh,
names. I waited until because of love. My mom, I am a mama's boy.
mm,
So I have a great affinity for my mom. I love my mom. And it's not say I don't love my dad, but I love my mom. Because of
right.
that, my mom was a bit colonial. She cherished the name that she came and got from my dad. So I
Mm,
didn't want to disrespect her from early out by changing it altogether.
sure.
But since she has transitioned, I've taken the liberty to fully change my name. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why today I am known as Rasavana Ashanti.
Mm-hmm.
My first name, Rasavana, originates from Madagascar.
Mm,
And everyone knows where Ashanti comes from.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Bobo Ashanti. It's about and the Ashanti tribe of Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
which is the
Mm-hmm.
origin from where it exists. But saying all
Mm-hmm.
that to say, I've never felt more comfortable. I it expresses I. My African name, Rasabana Ashanti, it expresses
Mm-hmm.
the essence of I. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel strange. When
Mm-hmm.
you do something or hear something and it touches you and yes, I have hearing it for the first time, but it is not the first time. It may be
Right.
the first time on this human journey, but I've heard it before on another or other human journeys that we have been on because this is not our first hurrah in the human form. As
Right.
we hold fast to the concept of reincarnation, that great song by Bonnie Whaler again. We are reincarnated souls from that time, living here on earth in this
Mm-hmm.
time. Well, if that concept stands true, and for I, it does. Why? Because I get what they call deja vu from time to time. And the deja vu that I experience is definitely not of modern times. You've been somewhere and you all of a sudden you feel the energy like you've been there before, or you're doing something and you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you were doing this before.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, there's no recollection in your present mind
Mm-hmm.
that can identify when you did it before. But everything within your inner being tells you that you have visited this place before, you have done this before, you have experienced something similar to this before. So this is how we know that we have been along this journey before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So saying that to say that the self that they created, and even though we came as how many generations after slavery, I and I can still within us feel that African essence, that African sense, that same declaration you made, Empress Akim, of assuming the name that you have currently and the journey that brought you to that name. These inner experience that we have, sometimes we don't know how to explain them because English words don't do the job. I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you, if we knew our original African tongue, we would be able to verbalize what we are feeling much easier and with much more meaning. Rastafari.
True indeed. I wanted to make a couple of um notes about what we've spoken thus far. One thing, and this is no joke at all. I was thinking about when we were talking about the power of names, and how um oftentimes ones are very unintentional about how we name our children. I used to work with women in recovery, and I came across a woman who battled with alcoholism, and her birth name was Tequila.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
want to laugh at, but
I'm
I'm
not
thinking like,
laughing.
no,
It's
no, no,
just,
no,
oh,
no, because I
wow.
feel the same way. I'm like, wow, are we serious? And I
Oh,
thought to myself,
wow.
who would name their child Tequila?
Mm. Yeah, people
And
do
yes, it
stuff
was a
like that.
sister.
Hmm.
Yes.
Very intentional, even though it may.
Listen.
Hmm.
And now
But
this young
that's
woman
bringing
is
that
in
energy to that
recovery.
person. Though when you give your
Jeez.
children names, you have to be intentional. If you
Yes.
to make sure that you give them an advance,
There you go. Yes.
yeah, push towards what you
Mm-hmm.
want them to be, what you hope
Mm-hmm.
that they will be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But it's
Mm-hmm.
the same way if you give them a negative name, that is what you're
Mm-hmm.
inviting. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said with my son, Akeem, if I knew what I know now, I would not have named him that way because he's lived that name to the essence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
But
word sound is
oh,
power. We have to be
Wow.
impeccable in the use of our words.
Mm.
That's the
I,
only way we are going to change things. You know what I mean?
Right.
To back to that positive energy that we all hope to experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
So
met a young lady, and not to cut you, but I met a young
go
lady
ahead. Mhm,
about 2 years ago in high school, and we became very good. You know, she would always come and look for me and so forth. And I'm not going to say her name, but her mom is from Ghana. Actually, her mom is from a royal family in Ghana,
mhm,
where her dad had to purchase or not purchase. You know how they exchange cows. He had to give the family X amount of livestock in order to get
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. And
in
in
order to what? I didn't hear it.
order to marry her,
Oh, dowry.
to be married,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they have a daughter, and the mom named the daughter. Now she was in about 11th grade, going to 12, and her mom changed her name.
Mm.
So I asked her mom because they invited me to her 18th birthday party. And I asked her mom, well, why, what was the reason? And she said the name she had given her, remember, she's from Ghana. She's
Mm.
from royalty. The name she had given her was so powerful for her that she didn't know how to behave or act um,
Mm.
to a degree. And by changing her name, she realized that she is now more calm. She is
Wow.
Mhm.
living up to the name
It's funny.
that
Wow.
she given. Yeah, but
Wow.
the original
Funny you
name
say that.
was very
Very funny.
powerful, and she just, yeah, it had her acting outside of herself because she didn't know how to carry the name, is what the mom said.
Well, it's very funny.
Wow.
My brethren here with me, his name is I Jabalani. Okay.
Mm.
And when he assumed that name, he's one of the Rastafari that changed his name early out, very early out in his
Is this
liberty.
is this Swahili?
And where what was the Jabo? What is the origin of your name? What
Zimbabwe,
he says
Oh.
it's as yeah,
Africa.
South African name. Now,
Mm-hmm.
ones several ones whispered in his ears, saying to him, don't take that name, let go that name, like trying to put a fearful thought in him about the
Mm-hmm.
name because of the
Mm-hmm.
power that the name generates. And
Mm.
I have to attest that the name is powerful because
Mm-hmm.
my brethren is not a normal person. He carries a no, he carries an
Give
energy and
thanks.
a spirit of Jabulani. And anyone
Mm.
that knows him knows that. Ask anybody that knows him. He carries that energy.
Wow.
So it is very important to be deliberate in how you identify yourself.
Yes.
Because if you're gonna identify yourself as a Jones, what is a Jones? A Jones is an addict,
Mm-hmm.
is somebody that is jonesing. They're jonesing over something. It has these essence behind it. So you're living a life and you wonder why certain things are happening to me. Why am I so attracted to certain
Mm.
things? And because that energy has been applied to you from they
Mm-hmm.
christened you. You
And these are
understand?
slave owners' names as well. You know,
That's
we got the last names of those who
and we see
owned
how
us.
they are. We look at their
Yes.
history. Look at John Hawkins. So when you name
Right.
John, don't feel proud about it because it's not John the Baptist.
Right.
The
Right.
essence of it is John Hawkins. You understand? There was no
Right.
John the Baptist in Africa. We know, say me, that the name Tumba, Sambo, some African name, but there was
Right.
no John the Baptist. That's a Eurocentric name, a Eurocentric presentation of the ancient Rastafari, who is known to be John the Baptist, because everyone knows that John the Baptist was a dreadlocks. Even the Christian Bible tells you that. See, and the way they describe is here. Yeah, you know, it says an African. You understand? So there was no. So we have to be deliberate as we reclaim our Africanness to relinquish those Eurocentric names and relinquish eventually their language. Not say we won't use it where it's applicable. You're on a world stage, you're presenting to a majority European audience. You're multilingual, so you can speak English and present what you're presenting to them. But you should also be able to communicate with your people. Your people. When you touch into Africa, you can communicate with your African family, understanding the nature of what they're saying. Because as we say, there are many African languages that English words do not express their meaning. There is no equivalent English word to that African word.
I
That's why
pray thee,
when you
my
hear,
Lord,
go ahead, Empress.
when you learn an African language, whatever that language may be, you start thinking like an African because the language that we're speaking,
Exactly.
a European language, so we're thinking that way. But
Right.
once we master the language, forget about it. It's,
Exactly.
yeah.
Key piece, key piece you
It's
just
so
brought in,
true.
Empress.
So
Key
true.
piece because it makes you think like an African. Beautifully said. And that is what we want. That is where we want to get back to. We spoke about it in the earliest, the thought. It starts with the thought. So if we're thinking like an African, we're gonna act like an African. We're gonna be an African. But if we are thinking mixed up, a hybrid, this hybrid thing, this Jamaican thing, this other thing, that's how you're gonna present yourself. That's why when we go to Africa, you hear a lot of um, Africans born in America have stories to say that they were treated this way by the Africans and that way by the Africans. And what my indigenous African brethren said to me is that, my lord, one of the reasons for that is that once come in and they come in with the Eurocentric ways, they don't come in and try to shed those ways. Some of them flaunt those ways as if they are superior ways because I'm coming from wherever in the West. My knowledge is greater, my status is higher, my whatever, because that is what Western philosophy teaches us. So my brethren was saying, the I them need to know how to blend in. He said, if you learned how to blend in, you would not have that problem. No one would be calling you Fragrengia or Muzungu. You would be called my brother, my sister. And that is a reality. And some of the Africans born in America that I hear telling their story, I can feel their energy right off the bat. I can tell why. I heard the revolutionary Pete O'Neill, a Black Panther, who had to abscond from the US for his life and ended up in what was Tanzania back then, which is about 40 years ago since he's been there now. And he told his story. He said when he first got there, he had these Western ways. He just thought, man, this society is slow. Everything here is just so slow. And, almost want to say backward because he was just a fast pace coming out of the fast lane world. And he said, man, it took him some pain to learn, but he eventually learned. He said he would visit certain elders And unlike in the West, when you visit an elder, you don't have the choice of saying, "Oh, I gotta go, I gotta be somewhere." No, no, no. It's when that elder releases you that you are allowed to go.
Mm,
So
mm,
you want to be moving on your time and your pace. And he said, every turn he turned, it slowed him down. And eventually he started to understand because he started to now shed those European ways, those Western ways, that fast pace and that presumption that I know. He's in the presence of the elder and he wants to reason word to word with the elder. That's not how it goes, my son.
mm,
You listen. I will listen to you. But the culture is you listen to me. I am the
mm,
elder. I am
mm,
giving you my wisdom. That's my duty to share my
mm,
life experience with you that you don't have to go through the pitfalls that I went through. You can now take our culture to the next level by jumping over some of those hurdles that held me back. There's a culture in Zimbabwe. Ras Miguel shared this with me after one of his trips there. He said, when I got there, and he met with the elders, the first thing they did was assign him a young man for the duration of his trip. And they said to him, Brother Miguel, as an elder, you never walk alone. You must always have a younger person accompanying you. So that way you pass on your knowledge, your wisdom to them, and don't go back with it because then it has no use. If you gain all this experience and wisdom and all you did was die with it, it had no use. You have to leave that legacy by passing it on. So their culture is that elder must have a youth. And in every way,
mm,
I see the value of that because as an elder, you need assistance too when you get to certain stage.
mm,
Unlike here in the West, a lot of brethren, even in Jamaica, a lot of elders who, because of the struggle, did not get a queen. Some did not have children because they were always living that soldier liberty. So now that they are in their adulthood, their anciency, their golden years, they have no assistance. So many of them die in their homes by themselves and are discovered later on. And
mm,
in our culture, that's a no-no. No, we don't have old age homes in our culture. We don't have places that are built just to house elders. No, elders are our treasure. We house them in our midst, in our communities, in our villages, because they're a treasure trove of knowledge. No book, computer, AI, or anything can replace the life experience of an elder. That's fact. So, yes, again, part of our rites of passage tradition is youths aligning themselves with their elders and elders aligning themselves with the youths. So they both can benefit from that union. The elders passing on his knowledge, the youths are assisting the elder where they need assistance. It's a win-win union, Rastafari.
I wanted to make a point too, because I see it so much now in the West that our elders have lost touch with the youth. They're no longer they're no longer passing the torch. In other words, they're no longer teaching traditions. Even again, if they're not ancient traditions, right? Some of the traditions of our ancestors, but just having that relationship, it's almost as if, you know, what I was brought up, being able to do, sitting and reason with the elders, and they teach me about morality and how to live right ways and things like that. Our youth don't have that anymore, and it's so obvious because in the schools, the children are so unruly. They have no guidance, and I was talking with a few teachers yesterday, because there's some festivities going on at the school, and I try to reason with some of the teachers who are really there for the children and not just there just, to make a check, we're really invested in the youth. A lot of times these conversations come up. We wear so many hats with the youth and trying to teach them the right way. We're mothers and we're fathers and we're therapists and counselors and, sometimes even their friends. But we see there has been a chain that has been broken. The link has been broken, because the children have no guidance. And I'm like, who's teaching them? Who's responsible? Of course the parents, but I'm like, where are the grandparents? And it's almost like they have
Yeah,
lost
yeah,
touch.
yeah,
They have
yeah.
lost touch. And so it's very important, even for us as community leaders, even if it's
Mhm.
not your birth child, it is our responsibility, again, as the village, to
Yeah,
teach a
that's one thing I
child,
admire
you know?
Empress Trisha for. I
Mm-hmm.
admire Empress Trisha for that. It's something
Mm-hmm.
she constantly is
Yes.
engaged in her grandchildren's lives, and she's,
Yes.
I mean, there's not a day that she doesn't mention them, and it's not about them, so that is very
Right.
important. You don't find that as a regular, as a norm in the Western hemisphere anymore. you
Nope.
know
It's so
um
true.
you
So
will
true.
just visit your grandparents once in a while, because yes, they are your grandparents, but that
Mm-hmm.
emphasis that should be placed upon them for
Right.
the for their knowledge, for their caring, and for, like they say, the grandparents are not your parents, so they spoil you. That's their duty to cuddle you and enable you in a positive way. Now, I'm not talking in a
Mm-hmm.
negative way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that, again, needs to be infused, and that was part of the whole rites of passage again,
Right.
because your
Right.
grandfather and grandmother, they play a vital role in
Yes.
constructing that rites of
And they
passage
know their
journey.
role. Very intentional about it. Very
Yes.
intentional about it. And not to cut you, but I was with my
No, no,
grandson.
go ahead.
Yes, I was with my grandson who was he just turned 2 in August. And what's so funny, I know my daughter and her mate, his father, teach him, but I don't think they're quite aware of the relationship that I have with my grandson. And I make every moment teachable, again, because I've always said, even when I was younger, when I gained the title of a grandmother, that I wanted to embrace it so much. When i
Mhm.
get when i get much older, and I'm sitting there and maybe feeble a little bit, that the children will sit around my feet, and I'm still giving them stories and teaching them the way. But I was with them on last Sunday, and as we were walking down the steps, I make every activity with him intentional. And my daughter's like, I didn't know he could count to 10, and he's just 2, you know and she
Mhm.
was like, well, wait a minute, because every moment that he's with me, I make sure my drums are out, he's getting the culture, I'm teaching him the language, because I'm like, the younger we start, the more they retain as well. But again, knowing my place, and it's always been in the back of my mind, when the opportunity comes, I want to reestablish that relationship. I taught my children, but now I have to teach my grands. And that link
Yes.
has been broken with our youth, because when I tell you,
Yes, yes,
there's
yes.
no teaching. And I take pride in it. I take pride in it. And we have to gain that pride back again. Just don't have your youth. And I advocate highly for our youth. We cannot just give life to these children and not guide them,
Hmm.
and I see
That's
so
true.
many lost youth who are pained by not knowing themselves, who don't have knowledge of self, at all, really. They seem like as if they're just operating, and I was going to make this point too when the empresses were blessing me up, well, Empress Trisha, specifically, about you know talking with the youth in their language. We got to remember too, as Rastafari, you know, it is important. We're called to establish unity, not just amongst ourselves as Africans, but as humanity. And I live by that. So me learning their languages as well, you know, it's helping me to communicate with them and broaden my own, you know, knowledge. But I make
Mhm.
sure that the other children embrace them as well. Because as Rastafari, we're bringing unity to humanity. And I
Surely.
never shared this. Yes, I never shared this with you all, but I have a nonprofit organization. It's called United Culture Youth. And the purpose of it is to help youth learn themselves. It's important that they go to their elders in their family, they go to their mothers, learn something about their culture, and then also share it amongst others so that we all become one. You know, when I learn your language, I can share with you my language, you know, and we can communicate with one another and we feel like family. You know, I'm not really operating as a organization quite yet, but I still utilize the principles that I established within the school, you know, because again, that oneness is necessary. When we start shedding off, you know, this indoctrination and, you know, that divide and conquer mentality, you know, we'll realize who we stand against. And it's the system, it's not us, you know. And so I encourage the children, and that's why, you know, I also have activities where I'm helping the youth with their names. You know, I'm like, because they see my last name. My last name is still, you know, my ex's last name, Balakomoso. You know, I won't call that one a Euro, well, not European name. What we call it, the Babylonian name, because it is African, you know. But
Mhm.
they always ask me, what does it mean? And so then that prompts me to say, you know what? Do you know what your name means? And none of them do. And then when they start researching it, you can see this light bulb, like, wow, you know, because no one
Mhm.
has yet taught them to look in themselves. You know, we're
Mhm.
we're we're also indoctrinating them, right? You know, giving them information. We're intentional about it, but at the same time, it's like, are we teaching them about themselves? Yes, you may teach them math and science and all these things, but we spend 8 hours a day in the school system not really telling them about themselves, you
Yeah,
know. So
that's real.
these things are very, very, very important. But you spend all this time, we did as well, from
Real
kindergarten
talk.
up until 12th grade. That's 13 years of indoctrination, and you come out not even knowing yourself, you know. And that's one reason why it's so important that we get out, we start establishing these schools, our schools, so that we're not indoctrinating them with just information that they may or may not use, but they're learning themselves along the way. Because to get to 12th grade and graduate, and then you're trying to discover yourself, is too late. It's never too late, right? But it's late,
But
you
it's
know.
very
So
important. Institutional building in the Black communities, in the Black empires, the Black kingdoms is very important. We have seen
mm-hmm,
that being successful. If you look at the Jewish people, that's how they maintain their culture. They have their own schools and all the institutions that they need to maintain continuity of their liberty and their culture.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
that's what Marcus Garvey was teaching us, institutional establishments. I will now ask the sisters, I'll now give you all the opportunity to, make your final analysis of our discussion as we close off this segment for this evening. Royal Empress Trisha.
Yes, greetings and greetings again. Beautiful, beautiful segment. Um, it is important. Rites of passage is important. The things that we teach our children. Yes, we know that it ends or it culminates with a ceremony as a sort. But sometimes because of, the way that we live, we're unable, or the society that we're living in, we're unable to do certain things at a certain time. And, but we teach our children the best that we can. And any child that we come in contact with, we try to make certain that we leave them a better person,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just, like I said, I'm on the elementary level, and every time a child come in, a young child come in, a youth come in, it's did you forget something outside? It's good morning, good afternoon, thank you.
Mm,
Sometimes they come, I wanted, no, it's not that way. And you try to impart on them the right
Mm-hmm.
things to
Mm-hmm.
the right way to speak, the right
Mm-hmm.
things to say. They may not get it fully at home, but at least when they come in contact with you, that you leave them a better person.
mm, mm-hmm,
True, 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 true. Yes, I.
mm-hmm.
Great, great, great. Yeah, man. Great
And I will expound on,
infusion.
mm-hmm.
Go
I
ahead.
will expound on that as well. I love working with young people. You know, it's challenging at times. I chose high school for a reason. I've always been purposeful about helping young people, especially our children, know themselves before they enter into the system, fully. And so I'm with you, Empress Trisha. I didn't know that you were with the younger ones. That's sweet. I love it. I love it. I
They,
love
they,
it because it's
they
because
moved in.
that's necessary as well, you know.
That was moved this year.
Thanks.
Right, because you're planting the seed. And for a while I was like, well, maybe I'm called to be at the high school level, but I also see the need, especially here in the West, for the younger ones, because the seed needs to be planted, that foundation needs to be established, which is not happening much either. So they come through and they get to high school level and they still don't have what they need. But as far as the rites of passage will go, I give thanks again, Priest Rasavana, for your enlightenment. You're a powerful man. I always want to lift you up, stroke your ego a little bit. No, but I give thanks that we have elders still who are journeying, and you're intentional about your works because, again, a younger one sitting at your feet. I don't know your age, but I'll just say that I'm a little younger than you. And so I have teachers who can teach me the way. And so this rites of passage, topic, we must establish it still within our families, within our communities. And even if it's not in a very formal way, there's a way. When you know a child at a certain age level, what they should be knowing, what they should be doing. We, as we are going, share what information you have, teach a child whatever you feel like they may be lacking, and then not only that, even the adults. I went through a rites of passage at 17. I was a teenager. Some go at a younger age, when we think about the traditions on the continent. There's different stages in the process, and some may be not just based on age but based on knowledge. At a certain level, it's time to teach this or learn this, and even with your name, if you still carry a European name, you can take yourself through a rites of passage and learning more about, renaming yourself. So, this is a great topic.
Thanks.
Again, I say it's like a
Thanks.
rebirth, it's like a rebirth, you know.
Yes, I.
And
Give
so,
thanks,
yeah,
Empress.
I give
Royal
thanks.
Empress Cindy.
Yes, Honorable. This has been a great topic this evening. There's still some things that we didn't get to touch upon, especially when a person transitions, because that's also a rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm,
and I was looking at a short earlier today, and the woman was saying how we should not be mourning anyone who passes because they're just exiting their physical body, but their spirit, lives on and moves on, and that we shouldn't bury our loved ones because that's just a form of entrapment and being here, that we should cremate, you know, people and bring them back to the water because we come from water. Um, I'm not so sure of how I feel about that, but as far as the conversation is concerned, yes, we touched upon a lot of different topics this evening, and they were all wonderful. For me, I've never really got to experience any kind of rite of passage because The only rite of passage that I can think of that I've gone through in my life is when I first got my menses and then when I became a mother.
Mm-hmm.
But those things over here do not get celebrated. They
Mm-hmm.
don't get celebrated. They get frowned upon, and um in places like Ghana, when a young girl is going to, going through puberty and stuff like that, that's a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rite of
Mm-hmm.
passage, and they
Mm-hmm.
celebrate these things. But over
Mm-hmm.
here is a totally different thing, and
True,
it's
true.
sad because the only thing that they do want to acknowledge is like a sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not even touching on all the different facets of a young girl coming into
Yourself.
womanhood, or a young
Mm-hmm.
man coming into manhood. So
True,
these are
true.
things that we still need to uphold in whatever ways that we can. If we decide to continue to live here in the West, we have to find ways to sort of dig a little deeper, and make the youths know that you're a young man, and these are certain things that you need to do to
Mm-hmm.
actually be a man. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you're just growing a little
Yeah,
bit
man.
of hairs down there, or you growing a little, that doesn't make you a man. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? And
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so
Yeah, we
it's
just
not
touched the
hard
tip
to
of it. Go
it's
ahead,
not
Empress.
it's not hard, but it's still something that a one's would want to really do, if they find
Yes.
it to be very important, and they
Mm-hmm.
want to keep that tradition alive. So I
Mm-hmm.
do
Exactly.
give thanks for the topic of discussion, my lord. And yes, give thanks,
Bless you.
Empress Akim and Empress Trisha, for your participation as well. I always learn from you all, and I do give thanks. I appreciate, love you a lot.
Thanks.
You as well,
Bless you,
Empress
love,
Indy.
Empress.
Yes, love, 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 love.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's very important for I and I to share our knowledge together. That's the way we grow and help each other to grow. So I give thanks. We barely scratched the surface of rites of passage. We will be revisiting this at some point because, yeah, there's so much more to get into because we didn't even get into the specifics of how you would, you know, um,
Mm-hmm.
coach a youth as he gets ready to enter adulthood. We didn't even get into the
Mm-hmm.
specifics of such. And again, transition, you know, when someone passes on, the reality of what that means and how we celebrate it. We have not got into those aspects of discussion. So we barely have touched the surface, but what I've heard from the item, the royal cast, has been very valuable, invaluable to really tell the truth. You know, our listeners tonight, I hope they have been really intensely listening. Those who have ability to record have been recording and taking notes on you know certain levels of the discussion so they can share these knowledge with their children, especially those children that are coming into adulthood, those are that have now begin to have children, that they can learn it and pass it on to them children, that they can help to reestablish rites of passage ceremonies within their their spaces,
Mm-hmm.
because this is not just about discussing what was. We are speaking to create what needs to be. We need
Mm-hmm.
to get back to those practices. Yes, we'll be doing them in a more modern, atmosphere, but we want to retain the essence of the value of what they held among us. The community village living, we need to reestablish that. Where when I was growing up, I could not misbehave out in public because I had so many extended aunts and uncles that had the power to discipline me And I'm not talking from a blood level. People that knew my family, that were friends of my mom, my dad, my uncle, whatever, they were uncle too. We weren't allowed to call my father's friends just Mr. John or John or no, it was Uncle John.
Mm.
And that established his authority right away. He had the authority wherever he saw me to make sure that I was doing the right thing, if not to discipline me and send me home. So we got to get back to those levels because that's what it means when we say it takes a village to grow a child. We have to create the atmosphere of the village. Rastafari. As time is running away with us at the moment, Royal Empress Trisha, you want to go right into the Pan African news?
Yes, blessed. So,
Rastafari.
blessed and give thanks again. And welcome, welcome. We thank you for sitting with us tonight to another evening of Pan African News. Today is September 25th, 2025. It is now 10:35 p.m. US time. The Democratic Republic of Congo is grappling with a new outbreak of Ebola as health officials have confirmed 11 additional cases in the Bolape health zone of the Kasai province. The Ebola outbreak remains concentrated in 6 health areas: Bambale, Bolape Community, Dekolo, Ngongo, and Miapanga. As of September 21st, 2025, the total number of reported cases has increased to 57, comprising 47 confirmed and 10 probable cases. The outbreak has claimed 35 lives, including 25 confirmed and 10 probable cases, resulting in an overall case fatality ratio of 61.4%. Notably, 5 health workers are among the confirmed cases. The affected individuals range from infants to those aged 65, with children in a 0 to 9 age group, particularly hard hit, making up 23% of total cases. Females account for 61% of the cases, with a case fatality ratio of 56% among women compared to 73% among men. Key vulnerable groups identified include children, housekeepers, and farmers. The African Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported last week that the outbreak has resulted in at least 16 deaths and 68 suspected cases since it was first announced earlier this month in Bolape. In response to the crisis, only 400 initial doses of the Everbo vaccine have been dispatched, with additional doses expected to arrive later. The World Health Organization stated that the vaccination efforts have faced challenges due to limited access and funding, although the International Coordinating Group on Vaccine Provisions have approved an additional 45,000 vaccines. An initial stockpile of 2,000 doses is already in the country. The outbreak marks the 16th instance of Ebola in the country since the disease was first identified in 1976, and it is attributed to the Zaire species of the virus. The situation poses further complications for a nation already struggling with ongoing conflicts involving rebel groups, particularly in the eastern regions, which have significantly impacted the healthcare system. In other news, Africa's youth, tech, and green innovators reshape the continent's business future. Africa's business landscape is evolving at breakneck speed. From young farmers transforming agriculture to startups scaling across continents and eco-entrepreneurs turning waste into opportunity, the continent's innovators are rewriting the rules of growth. Youth take the lead in agriculture. At the African Food Systems Forum in 2025 in Dakar, the spotlight was firmly on the continent's youth. The message was clear: Africa's food future lies in their hands. Young innovators are reimaging farming, shifting it away from subsistence toward a modern, technology driven sector that creates jobs and addresses climate challenges. From precision farming apps to climate smart practices, youth led solutions are injecting new energy into agriculture, a sector still employing the majority of Africans. Smallholder farmers face barriers to finance, technology, and market, said Alvaro Lario, president of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the IFAD. But when the youths bring innovation into the picture, farming becomes a business, not just survival. Beyond agriculture, Africa's technology scene is maturing fast and expanding its footprint well beyond the continent. Despite a global funding slowdown, African startups are raising billions, minting unicorns, and for the first time, scaling into Latin America and Europe. According to new data from Tech Cabal's Africa Investor Guide, African innovation is no longer just attracting venture capital, it is becoming exported. It is being exported. Startups from Uganda, Nigeria, and Tunisia are proven that African solutions can compete on a global stage, reshaping perceptions of the continent's role in the digital economy. This shift marks a turning point. Africa is moving from being a testing ground for innovation to a global hub of scalable, investment ready businesses. Waste to wealth in Morocco. In northern Morocco, innovation is taking a decidedly green turn. What was once shrimp waste, discarded in piles, is now being repurposed into organic fertilizer by PGP Technologies. Founded by two young entrepreneurs, the startup transforms shells into soil enriching products that boost yields and restore degraded land. The approach not only supports sustainable agriculture, but also demonstrates how local solutions can drive global impact. Every shrimp shell we recycle is a step toward healthier soils and higher productivity, the founders explained. It's about showing that nothing is waste, only opportunity. In other news, Congo and Rwanda set October rollout for security measures on the Trump-backed peace deal. The Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have agreed to begin implementing key security measures in October as part of a peace deal brokered with support from US President Donald Trump. The accord, signed earlier this year, aims to ease years of deadly conflict in eastern Congo, where Rwandan-backed M23 rebels and other armed groups have destabilized the region. Under the plan, joint monitoring mechanisms will be established along the border, while both countries commit to halting support for proxy militias. The initiative also includes humanitarian access for displaced civilians and the deployment of neutral observers. The agreement is seen as one of the most significant steps in recent years to address tensions that have fueled regional instability and forced millions from their homes. Implementation will be closely watched as previous ceasefires and accords have often collapsed. Officials in Kinshasa and Kigali say October will mark the first concrete test of whether political will and international backing can finally turn promises into lasting peace. In other news, Kenyan engineers turned deadly water hyacinth into eco-friendly innovation. On the shores of Lake Navasha, thick mats of water hyacinth are choking aquatic life, blocking sunlight, and devastating local fisheries. But for Kenyan engineer Joseph Ngutiru, the invasive plant became an opportunity to fight both environmental degradation and plastic pollution. Ngutiru is a founder and CEO of Haya Pack, a startup transforming water hyacinth into biodegradable alternatives to plastic, creating eco-friendly products while supporting local jobs. Water hyacinth is the world's most invasive aquatic weed, and Ngutiru says. It destroys aquatic ecosystems and affects fishing, irrigation, and even increases malaria risk. HiPAC's standout innovation is its biodegradable seedling bag, which are planted directly into the soil and release nutrients as they decompose, accelerating plant growth and eliminating plastic waste. Our products feel and perform like plastic, but decompose quickly, solving two problems at once, he explains. So far, Ngotiri's team has cleared over 20 acres of water hyacinth from Lake Navasha. Their efforts have earned him the 2025 Young Champion of the Earth Award from the United Nations Environment Program. In other news, Burkina, Mali, Niger residents hailed the ICC exit as steps to sovereignty. People in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali have welcomed the alliance of the Sahel states' withdrawal from the International Criminal Court, the ICC, framing it as a step toward full independence. The three members of the West African Alliance on Monday announced their immediate departure from the United Nations-backed body, calling it instrument of neo-colonialist repression. Emmanuel Kafando, a resident in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, described the decision as a good one in terms of total independence for the country. It was high time we left this court, which was particularly designed or pre-designed only for African leaders and not all the leaders of the world, he said. His view was echoed by another resident in the capital, Lionel Dolomwigo, who said he welcomed the news with great satisfaction and joy. Because we are sovereign, and every sovereign state must be able to take responsibility in all areas, including social and economic justice. The three military-led states created the alliance in 2023 and have since grown increasingly isolated from the West and drawn closer to countries such as Russia. Their armies have faced accusations of crimes against civilians as violence has escalated in the region against jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. While supporters of Bamako, Niamey, and Ouagadougou have hailed the withdrawal from the ICC, international observers say it may reduce avenues for prosecuting these crimes. The court was set up in 2002 to legally pursue cases of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and aggression. In other news, each day Beatrice Nutekpor weaves through the mangroves of harvest oysters for sale. In Ghana's coastal mangroves, oyster farming have been a key source of livelihood dominated for ages by women. Hundreds of women were trained in eco-friendly farming methods for oysters, including mangrove planting and preservation, and selective oyster harvesting to lessen the impact of climate change. Previously, the oysters attached themselves to the mangroves, but because the mangroves have been cut now, they settle in the water. The oysters have started attaching themselves to the mangroves we have planted. We also harvest the fish that hides in the roots of the mangroves, so the mangroves are very good for us, says Nutek Poor. It's a family tradition she's been doing since she was 15. Now at 45, she is struggling to sustain the practice and pass it to her daughter. She says, just as my mother taught me this business, I also want to teach my daughter so that she could also teach her child. Then oyster farming will become our family's business. Mangroves, trees, or shrubs that grow along coastlines serve a critical multifunctional purpose in the aquatic ecosystem, ranging from being a home to fish to providing a buffer for coastal erosion from rising sea levels and protection to land during storms and cyclones. However, training by the Nonprofit Development Action Association ended after it lost its U.S. aid as a result of U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to cut foreign aid contracts. It let the women it left the women to try what they can to keep their generational practice and sustain their families as Ghana emerges from its worst economic crisis in decades. Oyster farming involves breeding oysters in a controlled aquatic environment for commercial purposes. Much like the rest of the coastal West African nations, Ghana has lost a significant portion of its mangroves to climate change and development. There is no available data on recent depletion, but over 80% of the original mangroves has been lost since the last century. Mangroves are also increasingly threatened by climate change as global temperatures and sea levels rise. A single basin of oysters sells for roughly 47 Ghanaian cedis, which is $4. And Netekpor sells just enough to feed her family and put her daughters through school. As mangroves are depleted by people in search of firewood, development has crept into the coastal areas and authorities release water from overflowing dams, endangering the forests. Promise Punya, Community Liaison Officer of the Development Action Association, says the U.S. aid project helped the community understand the vital role that mangroves play in the ecosystem. He says, at first, we didn't know the importance of the mangroves, and through the USAID project, and they brought us a student from Cape Coast University to teach us how important the mangroves are. The loss of mangroves means farmers like Nutekpor risk their lives free diving 30 feet, which is 9 meters or deeper for hours in search of oysters that migrate to deeper water in the absence of mangrove roots. The oysters play an ecological role in the estuary. If we have more oysters in a water body in any mangrove area, it's found that the water gets cleaner than before, says Francis Nunu, a professor of fisheries science at the University of Ghana. Although replanting the mangroves have paid off for the women, it is a backbreaking job that keeps them in the harsh sun for hours. Nono believes the time has come to find alternative sources of income for the women. He says, the reliance of the coastal people on these ecosystems is heavy. So I would also add that we should intentionally find alternative livelihoods for them to help reduce the heavy reliance on mangroves ecosystem, oysters, and all the fish and other things that we have, because we have a situation where if you don't take care, the rate of destruction is always higher than the rate of repopulation. We are going to lose some species and we're going to lose some lives. In our final news, Nigerian music star Davido joins Grammy Voting Academy. Nigerian Afrobeat superstar Davido has officially become a voting member of the Recording Academy, organization behind the Grammy Awards. As a member, Davido will now help decide winners in music's most prestigious categories. Speaking on the milestones, he said, understanding the importance of how our voices are heard, I am participating in the Grammy Award process. It is a game changer. I have learned that voting empowers you to have a say in what is considered and voted on in each season. I am honored to be part of the Recording Academy community, and I look forward to voting. Davido's inclusion follows a wider push by the Recording Academy to broaden and diversify its members, a trend that has increased representation from African artists and other international acts. Davido had previously received multiple Grammy nominations, including 3 in 2024. His 2025 nod came from a collaboration with Chris Brown and Luge on Sensational, which was up for Best African Music Performance, but lost to Thames' Love Me Gigi. Thank you for listening to the Pan-African News. I am Empress Trisha, and do have a blessed and restful evening. Coming up with a commentary. It was prophesied that until Africa and people of African descent receive their just recompense for the crimes committed against their humanity, there will be wars and rumors of wars. Viewing the global landscape, it is clearly apparent that such prophecy has been fulfilled. This is the third destruction of Jerusalem on the way. The African continent is facing its third period of intrusive invasion by external dark forces. First, the invasion and kidnapping of the Black gems of Africa. Secondly, the colonization of Africa and its diaspora. And presently, the neocolonization of Africa and its diaspora. These three dark moments in our story have robbed the people of Africa of their humanity, dignity, and self-worth, leaving the nation torn apart by poverty and neediness. These eras destroy the fabric of African traditional practices, ancestral reverence, and African spirituality, forcing a strange foreign way of life on Africans. One of the most valuable traditions that was lost or forsaken is the traditional rites of passage practices that help to shape individuals, the village, communities, and the overall nation. Rites of passage is a method of passing on traditional practices that fosters dignity, self-worth, and principles. It also teaches the youth how to be husbands, wives, mothers, fathers by ingraining morals and ethics in them from an early time. The Africans of today have been practicing the methods forced upon us by our enslavers, which have proven fatal to African existence. People of African ancestry must return to our ancestral traditions, those that have been proven to foster progressive human social development. The state of the world is proof that the European methods of development has failed miserably. So why are the leaders of Africa seeking to pattern their failed approach? It is long overdue that Africans look back to know how to move forward. Sankofa, a people with the knowledge of the history is like a dying, and people with the knowledge, without the knowledge of their history, is like a dying tree. Know thy history, and you will know yourself. Blessed love. And thank you again for listening to the Pan African News and the commentary. Chris Rasavana.
We give thanks, Royal Empress, and we do give thanks for the Royal cast being in the place tonight, to have such a great discussion. I hope everyone that was listening learned something, are empowered, and ready for action, because it's all about what we do, not so much what we say. Word without works is vain and leads to destruction, but words with action makes changes. And that's what we're all about. Positive changes for Africa and the African diaspora. And as we have heard, many things are happening on the continent that are positive and advancing, regardless of them withholding their US aid. So we do give thanks for self-reliance, for, independence, for taking hold of our own destiny and charting a clear path to the future. Royal cast and listeners, we do give thanks for this segment and this evening's program of Roots and Culture. I know it's been a little bit different. We did not have a lot of musical interludes, but sometimes that's how it works. You know, you were filled with knowledge, with information. A lot of what I know, many of you did not know prior to listening to the program. So I think the moment was spent very well. Next week, yeah, we're here again to take the ride back in time to be able to move forward. See, so tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that consciousness is on Turn It Up Radio, turnitup.com, with I, Rasavana Ashanti, and the Royal Cast on Roots and Culture. I will say, walk good. Remember now, support black, buy black, walk black, think black, and still strive to be blacker black. Seeing one black heart of love. Rastafari. Until next week. Tune in on Saturday for a great interview that will be coming forward with our brother Ras Abi there in Ethiopia. He is a geographic historian. He knows Ethiopia like the back of his hands. And he will be sharing and exposing, unearthing some of the mysteries of Ethiopia, knowledge you don't know and which you will benefit from, knowing that our homeland is so magnificent as we visit the seat of the Talbot, the Ark of the Covenant, the holy, sacred city. So tune in at 7 on Saturday, Rastafari, to the cosmic revelation with I, Rasavana Ashanti, as we venture into the mysteries of Ethiopia. Blessed.
Blessed love, my Lord and Empress. Give thanks. Honorable Priest, give thanks. Honorable Empress Cindy and Honorable Empress Akim. Do have a blessed evening. Give thanks for the Woman Freedom Liberation League and for all royal casts, those here and those to come. Blessed love.
Blessed love, Royal
Blessed
Empress. Empress Cindy.
love.
Blessed
Blessed
love, blessed love. Give thanks, Honorable Empress Trisha, and give thanks, Priest Rasavana and Honorable Empress Akim. Give thanks.
Yes, blessed love, everyone.
Well, blessed love,
Rastafari.
Honorable Empress Cindy. Blessed.
Have a blessed night and refreshing rest, and a prosperous rest of the week or the strong. Rastafari.
Rastafari.